All right. Good evening, everyone. It is now 5 o'clock. Welcome to the February 24th, 2025 Planning and Zoning meeting. Ms. Alondra, can you please call for roll?
Yes. Christopher Toth. Here. Ishmael Harris.
Here.
Keith Alborn.
Here.
Gary Moss.
Here.
Jeffrey Estes is not here. Patrice Parsons, also not here. And Joshua Bingaman, not here. Jordan Scott.
Here.
And David Burrow is not here.
All right. We have enough for a quorum. All right.
Yes.
We are going to move on to item 2, citizen comments. Up first, we have Joe Miller.
Yes, sir. I'd like to know.
Mr. Miller, if you can please come to the podium. We'll need you to state your name, and you don't have to give us your whole address, but just your residence, please. And you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. I live at 2005 Pecan Street here in Bastrop. And I read over this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just an everyday guy. And to me, I'd like to know what the heck's going on. I'd like to be explained why we're even doing this right now. We're fixing to have another election here soon, and y'all, it seems like you're trying to rush this through. I don't know all what's going on, but I would like to know. Like I said, I can't really understand a lot of this, what you've written down here. You need to be a lawyer to understand it, I think. And that's about what I have to say.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. We'll hopefully tonight we'll be able to explain some of your or answer some of your questions with what we present.
All right.
Early in the meeting.
Early in the meeting.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, up next we have Rita Ward. She wishes to speak. Come on up, Ms. Ward.
Rita Ward, 442 Old Austin Highway. I had the privilege of seeing the Grove this past week. I have seen lots of cookie cutter communities, but that just blew my mind. And whoever developed it, I felt like they ought to be taken out and shot at sunrise, but I think that they ought to stand on some kind of scaffold and look at the crap that look at the stuff that they put up. And when you have new developments, the street should be at least 70 feet wide. The driveways should be long enough to accommodate, I'm not real familiar with big trucks and stuff, but you know, the dualies and that sort of thing. And it seems to me like the lots should be at least 75 by 100. But looking out at the Grove, if they had a fire out there in the middle of the Grove, it would be hard for a fire truck to get in there and do anything about that. Also, we haven't had any rain in a long time, but I saw flash flood on the San Gabriel. I don't know if y'all know where Joshua is or not, but it's the other side of Joshua. And there were a lot of RVs parked there, and they lost their RVs with this flash flood. And so I don't think that you ought to let anybody have a permanent RV park close to the river. I don't think anybody ought to have a permanent home close to the river. And that's my thoughts for the day.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. All right. Up next, we have Pablo Serna. Please give us your name, location, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Pablo Serna, 1104 Hill Street. Just wanted to address y'all in the general citizen section about the importance of maintaining our historic character, and one of those aspects is the street grid network, and how that weaves the whole aspect of vision together I'm going to point out at item number 7 how we're rushing through this, as somebody said, and we've actually replacing the current transportation master plan with an older version from 2017, and Blakey Lane on the older map is a smaller collector street. So there's even an example of what that looks like, and I think it's even smaller than what's there right now. But on the newer map, it was a multimodal, much larger 80-foot wide primary collector street. So, primary multimodal street. So as someone pointed out, our streets are too small, and we need to have some thought between how we're building, how that's going to look, how those streets interact with other streets, and then we can get into what those look like on the inside. So I do think that as we go through this, I think in a way we've built up a lot of biasness against the code for good reason. I think there's some problems with the code, and I'm hoping that what we're trying to do now is address that in a real way. But to just throw everything out and start over or go back, I don't know how many years that is, but that older transportation master plan is quite old. And if you look at it, and I know it's in the handouts, and I hope we can pull that up and see the inconsistencies between the older plan and the newer plan, and then we did overlay the grid on top of that. Maybe it's not a mandatory grid, maybe it can be a recommended, but we need to have some kind of vision and thought, because right now there's not a lot of forward thinking. It's more reactionary, and I think that that's a bad move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cerna. Okay, we have another person that signed up to talk, Lyle Nelson. Please state your name and your
Lyle
residence.
Nelson, 209 North Hunting Lodge Lane here in Bastrop, Texas. I appreciate y'all's time and attention to these issues. Again, I'm not going to speak on the technical aspects of this, only into the process. Citizens need to have an opportunity to digest this information and to provide comment, to provide input into it. I know that a lot of y'all have listened to several of these items over the past several months, but as a citizen, after receiving notice that you may not be able to do with your property as you intended, it creates some alarm. And I would just ask for y'all to perhaps slow down this process, especially with the looming election coming up, as well as the legislature currently in session. I would ask a favor, Mr. Chair, that as we come to the individual items, that we have the items laid out and the opportunity for staff to answer questions from the commission before we open up the public hearing, so the public has a better idea of what we're discussing. We hurried into a lot of things last week, and I would prefer for it to be laid out completely so that we can have a better understanding of what y'all are contemplating. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. So we have one more. He does not wish to speak, but he is in support of items 6A, 7A, 7B, 7C, 8A, 9A, 11A, 12A, and 12B, and that is Jimmy Crouch. I didn't mean to present it like that, but thank you, Mr. Crouch. All right. We have Ray Matthews who wishes to speak. All right, Mr. Matthews, please give us your name and location,
Hi, my
please.
name's
You have
Ray.
3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Ray Matthews. Sorry, I'm a little late to the game here. I just got a little meeting on next door, and I'm still trying to catch up on what we're actually changing here real quick. One of my things that been in Bastrop for multiple years. I own multiple houses in Riverside Grove subdivision. I love this town. I love the small town feel of it. I'm all for development. I like the P3 zones. I like the small town feel of it, single family lots. Just be mindful of the type of city we're building. I'm glad to see that we still got something. The one right next to my house is rural, and I'm okay with up to neighborhood with the single family lot sizes. Like a quarter acre or a third acre lot sounds pretty darn good to me. But when you start jamming too many people into a small space, Texas is the land of the big wide open spaces. So when you start cramming people too close together, problems start to develop. Things like, where's the water going to come from? Where's the sewer going to come from? all those other resources have to be taken into consideration. My water pressure last week, I pulled it out of the tap and it came out brown. So, you know, life gets a little interesting sometimes. I'm all for development, done the right way. Don't exactly even know what this plan is right now. Otherwise, I just told that we wanted to say something, but just please be mindful of this and give the citizens a chance to fully catch up to what y'all are planning. Thank you all so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. All right, we have Heather Green, who has signed up to speak for citizen comments. Again, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank
Hello,
you.
Heather Green, 2007 Pecan Street. I, like my neighbor, am a little confused as to why we are pushing this through when I've also been told that the lot behind us has already been grandfathered in to approve 43 tiny homes in a lot that is not big enough for 43 tiny homes with one entrance and one exit. We have lived at that house for 30 years. I am 32 years old, so my family has been there for just about my entire life, and the idea of having that many people coming in and out is beyond ridiculous. And there is nobody came to tell us that it was already approved, so I'm confused as to why we're having a discussion about a lot that is closer to the other side of town and why nobody seems concerned about what's going on our side of the railroad tracks. And I just want to make sure that it is clarified, because 43 homes will not fit there. It doesn't seem safe. It doesn't feel like there's going to be room for that many homes. I don't see how it's feasible, and I don't know why it got grandfathered in, and we're concerned about something further down the street and not concerned about this, because a duplex or 2 duplexes seems to be everybody's concern, but 43 tiny homes on 4 acres is not feasible. I just want to make sure that that is addressed today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any more citizen comments? All right, we have one more. Robin Payson, please come up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robin Payson. I live at 1704 Wilson Street. I've been here 37 years, so I've seen a lot of changes. When I first moved here, I think there was a small grocery store on 71 and not much else. So, and I fell in love with Bastrop. It's a beautiful community and a beautiful town. And one of the things that makes it that is I live on Wilson Street, 1704 Wilson Street. It's a historic home. I feel very blessed to have lived there for so long. And I knew that Bastrop was the kind of community that would attract growth. It's just too pretty to not have a lot of people want to come and live here. But what I'm worried about as I see the development, on 20, 21, 95, 304, north-south, that it's really important. I lived through the fire, and I wondered what would have happened if the fire had burned all of Bastrop, the city, this historic area, and how different a community it would be if we had lost the heart of Bastrop. I don't want to make the same mistake of losing the heart of Bastrop with rushing for development. And the last planning and zoning meeting I went to was when they were building Piney Creek, and they made the promise that they would, they asked for the zoning, a change in zoning to be able to build affordable housing, and then the developer sold that development immediately for more money. And those houses are not affordable to anybody who's worried about affordable housing. And I don't want to go down that same road again. I think it's very important to maintain similar residential construction inside the area where we have that. And that means to me minimum lots of 1/3 of an acre, and being aware of not destroying that which we love. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That is it for citizen comments. We will move on to item 3A. Ms. Alondra, did we make sure that we mark down Commissioner Parsons for 613?
Yes, both Jeffrey and Patrice, yes.
Do you want to go ahead? All right. So we have discussed earlier, and we're going to make sure that we get to the meat and potatoes of what we see why everyone is here. So we're going to move some things around on the agenda so that we can get these things taken care of. So we're going to move on to item 12, duplexes in P2 and P3. Oh, you want to do lot sizes first? Okay. My apologies. We're going to go lot sizes first. So we're going to move to item A, minimum lot sizes.
So I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to face the audience because it's a little bit difficult to have our back to you and not be able to communicate. So we're going to go over minimum lot sizes, but first I want to explain to everybody why we're here. And I continue to hear we haven't had enough time, we haven't had enough time. The long and short of it is we're trying for Bastrop to not be Austin. That is the long and short of it. And right now, the current code that we are under is what's called a new urbanism code. And that is no minimum lot sizes. We had a really large impervious cover number. We had some things that did anything but protect authentic Bastrop. Anything but protect authentic Bastrop. And if you've heard me speak before from the very beginning, I said the emperor is not wearing any clothes. That means that you had a flood, and most of Texas flooded in 1516. You went under a development moratorium because you said you needed to address the drainage. And yet, we passed a code that had really high impervious cover, which means a lot more concrete on a lot more concrete on commercial. And we went to a code that had no minimum lot sizes. So where you could have protected from flooding, you went to a code that did anything but. That code created on the guise of walkability, and they showed very pretty pictures, very pretty pictures. And for those who say you're passing this too quickly, you're passing this too quickly, you had 6 public hearings and development code rodeos. You had 1 P&Z meeting, and you had 2 city council meetings, and your entire code was changed. This is a form-based code. As long as I don't see it, smell it, or hear it, it's okay to go next to you. That is dangerous in authentic Bastrop. And we've had a fight for the last 2 years on what is authentic. Well, I gotta tell you, Tracy's might be authentic, but we have zones and designations for that. There are things that can go next to you, and so long as it looks like the house next to you, it's going to be an allowed use, and we'll have to chase it under nuisance laws. And so the collection of things we've been trying to do over the last couple of years is not to turn Bastrop into Austin. Period. Said, done. The minimum lot size that you've talked about today is number 1, is what does the built environment look like? And we have tools in the code that if you want to build 2,500 square foot lots, or God forbid, 1,500 square foot lots, or in some proposed developments, 1,000 square foot lots, yes, you heard me right, 1,000 square feet lots, to the development that's 43 plus units on 4.25 acres, that's exactly why we're here. So that stuff doesn't continue to happen. And I get beat up 10 ways to Sunday about, that's affordable housing. Doggone it, Sylvia, you're preventing affordable housing. No, there are places in the town where that is appropriate. Historic Bastrop, what we know as Bastrop with its big lots, its big trees, its wide streets, is not the place in the opinion of this city manager. City managers come and go. It takes 72 hours in a public meeting for this council to say, we're done with her. I move on. I have a beautiful parachute. We walk away. You, the residents, get to live with the mess that is created by folks who don't even live here anymore. The folks who wrote that code aren't from here, didn't live here, and still don't live here. You have to live with that. And so because we have a form-based code, duplexes and other similar building types are allowed in what was normally a single-family zone. So as we talk about minimum lot sizes, I want you to take that into consideration. Somebody told me the other day, you don't know how to math. Well, I'm going to say he hasn't probably driven around Bastrop enough. So the minimum lot size that we are seeking is to mirror the built environment. And that means we did an average of every single lot in the city that is zoned P2, which is rural. When we annex something, it comes in as rural. P2 is rural. Those lots are a little bit more than an acre. And all we're saying is if you're in a P2 zone, you should have a minimum lot size of an acre. So why? So that your neighbors have some reliability and some predictability of what's going to come around you. Today, you have none of that. You can get 10 plus units an acre today under the development rules. If you're living next to a empty vacant lot, there's 2 1-acre lots on Main Street right now. A little bit of an access issue, but to think that those 2 1-acre lots, which would have normally housed 4 units, as you'll see on the map, normally would have housed 4 units, can equal 20 plus. Super scary stuff. Super scary if you're the neighbor who doesn't know what's going on next to you, but even worse for staff from a how do I drain it? How do I feed the sewer to it? How do I make sure I have appropriate roads so that I'm not causing collisions and the buses? This code that we're under today that, you know, had all kinds of public input. How many of you know how narrow the roads are? And how many of you know that the code says we really want to do away with the vehicle? And it doesn't say do away, but it says create alternate modes of transportation. How many of you know that? Which is why when you see some of those things and you go, man, you can't even drive a fire truck through there. Guess what? Equals the code. And guess what? That code wants to get narrower. Somewhere in that code, there's a development that said the city's going to go buy European fire trucks so that we could fit our fire trucks onto 22-foot wide roads. I don't have the money to do that. You don't have the money to do that. The fire department is a general fund operated department. Period. I've got to raise property taxes. Fire and police are always in competition with parks. They're always in competition with the library. They're in competition with streets. They're in competition with everything else. So the changes that we're proposing are really super simple. I don't want to turn Bastrop into Austin. Plenty of places off of 95, 21, 20, 71, plenty of places where if you want to buy in a place and you know those are tiny lots, wonderful, you know what you're getting yourself into. But today in historic Bastrop, where it's a crapshoot about what's going to end up next to you, 43 homes, ma'am, 43 homes. That's a toughie. That is a super toughie. So today's intent is to make sure that the P2 are 1-acre lots, and the P3, we did the analysis, we said 1/3 of an acre. I've had some pushback from the development community. I've had some pushback from folks on the guise of affordable housing saying we really want those lots to be 1/4 acre lots. That's a 10,000 square foot lot. Not out of the realm of possibility. I'll leave that to the Planning Commission and you, the public, to make the determination on what you want that to be. The other things that we'll talk about in this are setbacks. If you go on MLK, and we showed some pictures, and we'll show them here in a bit, the setbacks are super close to the street. Why? Because parking up until recently wasn't even required in the code anymore. So they're pushing all of the parking onto the street. Narrower street parking, where are my fire trucks and emergency vehicles supposed to go? And the planners will tell you a narrower street is more economically feasible for the city. Why? Because it costs less to build and it costs less to maintain. That's not true. When you put the same amount of burden on that street, I got to maintain it anyway. And worse, now I've got to go through the enforcement process of where are people parking. That's why in Piney Creek Bend, you see people only being able to park on one side of the street. Or in Pecan Park, you can only park in certain areas. And those setbacks are so close to the street that those vehicles push off into the sidewalk. And so if you're having to walk, you're having to go around into the street. None of those things make sense. None of those things. So that just super high level, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to not have you mirror Austin. We're trying to keep Bastrop, Bastrop. So minimum lot sizes, P2, 1 acre, P3, a third of an acre is what was proposed. And ma'am, there's your 43 unit, 40 plus unit. You're right, one way in, one way out. Yep, in a flood prone area. And the sad thing about our code is that it says, again, remember, this was a code that was written to protect you from flooding. Remember? Wasn't that right, Mayor Nelson? We're supposed to protect you from flooding. This code was supposed to protect you from flooding. And yet, our codes are written so that pre and post development must equal. It doesn't say you have to improve the drainage. It just says you can't make it worse. And so they gave you a higher impervious cover number. You can beat me up all day long. I didn't write it. I was called in to help fix it. But I'm telling you today, the emperor's not wearing any clothes. That's what that layout looks like. We fixed a park development fee that you'll hear about tonight. Parks are defined as public spaces. Parks are defined as a whole bunch of other stuff. This particular development is going to dedicate a linear park that is less than 12 feet wide. But that's a park under our current code. So there are things to fix, absolutely things to fix. We love our trees. There's tree protections tonight. We love our big open spaces. Those are on tonight. We want our neighborhoods to look similar. Those are on tonight. That's what we're trying to do. So to avoid any confusion, we're not trying to make it easier for development. Now, I also heard not every developer is bad, and I absolutely believe that. There's a place to do it. Our rules just have to match what we actually want built. That's it. And so that's what we're trying to do tonight. That is, I come from the coast. That's a development in Rockport. What developers are trying to do here is not new. It's a fiscal sustainability for the city. What does that mean? Translation? How many can you fit there because the city will collect more property taxes? That's what that means. It doesn't mean it's going to be cheaper to anybody. It means it's fiscally sustainable for the city. And my argument is I can sustain the city in much different ways and cram a bunch of people on a very small piece of property. Those are the proposed code changes. And so for the folks that say, well, but I have less than a third of an acre, we wrote in relief for grandfathered lots. We wrote relief in for that last year into the code. I'm not going to tell you you can't build. I'm not going to tell you you can't do any of those things. Those are administrative reliefs in the code.
Excuse me, Madam City Manager. City Manager, can we go back to that one slide, please? One more? Okay. So I just want everyone to have a good look at that, right, so that you can see that there's no speculation or you may have some questions to it. These are the things that we're proposing. These are the things that we have been discussing.
And so there's 1 acre for P2. 1 acre under the P2, and your setback should match the built environment, and a third of an acre under the P3. That's my minimum lot size spiel. There you go.
No, we have actual people who would like to speak on this agenda item. And we have some who sent emails in, and we have also someone who would like to come up and speak. We're going to go through the email real quick. We have Melinda Larson. She does not wish to speak, but she shows support for agenda item 8A. We have Michelle Mestris. She does not wish to speak, but she is also in support of item 8A. Bless you. And now we have Pablo Serna, who has signed up to speak on item 8A. Yes. Come again?
Can you please open up the public?
Oh,
hearing?
yes, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to, I'm getting different protocols thrown at me. I want to make sure I'm doing it right and giving everyone a fair chance to speak.
Thank you.
So, all right. So we will open up the public hearing. All right, Mr. Serna, we're ready to go. Thank you.
That is Pablo Serna, 1104 Hill Street, actually speaking in support of this item. But I don't think it actually is fully addressing the issue of density, and I want to explain that. I think what we're attempting to do is regulate density with square footage, and we're still going to be allowing single-family homes and up to two ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and those accessory dwelling units are not limited in size. So they could be 5,000 square feet, according to one of our city councilmen, if it fits. And so I think that the best way, I think, to regulate density is to have a density unit per acre and look at it on a block-by-block point of reference. So, again, I think this is a needed thing. Obviously, we don't want to – I think another thing that we're not really addressing is the administrative subdivisions that can happen. I think up to 4. You can right now administratively subdivide a large lot up to 4 without going through P&Z and council if your lot is large enough now. Even if we're moving up the square footage to 0.3 of an acre, I don't think we fully have thought that all the way through. So this will definitely limit development because I don't think there's that many 0.3 acres that can be done, but I think there's going to be some large lots that are going to be purchased, that are going to be demoed and subdivided, and then a bunch of ADUs put up on it, and you're still going to have a multifamily situation because 2 ADUs in a single family, that's 3 non-related families living on a single family lot, and I don't think you guys have really addressed that, so I'd like to hear some discussion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Serna. All right, I don't have anyone else signed up, so I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, we can have some discussion. Commissioners? Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Parsons.
Sylvia, you're going to have to help me out. I had a knee surgery and my brain's not functioning very well. Did we talk last week about you coming back to us with some other options?
That's under duplexes.
Thank you.
I did have some pushback from the Austin Home Builders Association who said they would like to go to quarter acre.
Well, what we're basically talking about here is just baseline. You got to start someplace. You got to draw a line in the sand. It's a pretty good place because we have all kinds of other things, the cup, and do all kinds of things to be able to put everything in a way that people really want it to be. So that's all I got to say about that.
So, what's your pushback against a quarter acre? Because I live in Hunter's Crossing, and I'm looking at other neighborhoods like Riverside Grove and Pecan Park, and most of those lots are 0.15, 0.2 acres. So a quarter acre, would that not be something that's feasible? I know maybe from a downtown perspective that's kind of small, but I'm looking at these other neighborhoods that have been in Bastrop for as long as a lot of people have been alive, and they're I mean, they're not like too terribly small. Like I don't want to see like a 0.1 or 0.11 acre, but a quarter acre, that's 0.25. Where's your pushback against that?
Staff doesn't have any opposition. We did the math, even though folks will say the math doesn't math. The average lot in a P3 was 0.33, and that's what is currently on the ground. So again, a quarter acre lot is about a 10,000 square foot lot. What you're going to find in Riverside Grove is about 6,500, 7,500. What you're going to find in Pecan is even smaller. It's 6,500, 5,500 to 6,500. So those are the kinds of densities that creates. You don't have a whole lot of pushback from staff at 0.25. It is a start.
So you're just making the recommendation of a third of an acre based on just the average lot,
Yes.
lot size entirety. Okay.
And to Mr. Cerna's point, council approved one ADU by rights, if you recall, and more if you can drain it, if you can park it, if you can, whatever. So we are already down a super slippery slope of multifamily in a single family zone. And I get it, the affordable housing, people are like, I need it, that's how I support myself, that's how I blank, 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 fill in the blanks. But we don't have any major opposition to 0.25.
Yeah, because, I mean, to his point, really the only thing that's protecting us from high density now at this point is lot coverage. But even at a third of an acre, you're still able to squeeze probably 2 or 3 residential buildings if you're going to go the traditional ADU, which is a garage with a living space above it. And that is
Zero
inherently
impervious
Austin.
cover net back, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if we're going, it's 60%.
50%.
It's 50% for residential. So a 4,000 square foot lot, that's including the driveways. So 7,000 square foot. I mean, you could easily put in a home, 2,000 square foot home, a driveway, and 2,000 square foot buildings, because you're really looking at lot coverage, not building up or down. So I think, me personally, I think a third of an acre is a little too large. I see the housing's point as far as like I mean, I'm looking at both sides, the resident of Bastrop and then your developer. I'd like to try to find a middle ground, and before you even said that, I was thinking maybe a quarter acre would be feasible, a feasible middle ground to make everybody happy, because like I said, going to Riverside, going to Hunter's Crossing, these neighborhoods have been around for a long time. Plenty of people that grew up in Bastrop, that have lived in Bastrop a long time. I haven't really heard any complaints of how small those neighborhoods are, especially if you're going with the larger roads and whatnot. Most of those are under a quarter acre, so I would be okay with changing it to a quarter acre just to keep everybody happy in that sense.
So I'll remind you that if you're going to develop a large development, you still have the Planned Development District tool to come under. So you can go, as small as you want to for new development. And that is, again, if you're buying into an area and that is what the expectation is, wonderful. It's what's happening in our core.
Yeah. Which brings to a point, if you do a third of an acre and you had an acre of land, you could put 3 units on that. But if you went to a quarter,
You could do
put 4.
Correct.
So that's increasing the density.
Correct.
I think above
Plus
what
the
most people.
ADUs,
Yeah.
plus the ADUs, plus.
So by having the third acre, that cuts it down a little bit, the density. And we're really talking about trying to protect downtown, authentic Bastrop.
Authentic, yes. I'm glad everybody uses the air quotes.
I don't understand why for the entirety of the city jurisdiction, we have this philosophy that the entire city is what downtown is. And I've had this question since I've joined the Planning and Zoning Board, where we're trying to apply this philosophy to areas like 304, for example, where there really isn't an established historic area. So my thing is there a possibility of creating some sort of separate designation for the areas that are wanting to be protected and not punish basically the rest of Bastrop that's being developed with lot sizes and whatnot.
Yes, but there's already a tool for that, and that's the Plan Development District. So if you have 7 acres on 304, and you want to come subdivide it into 2,500 square foot lots, because that's what your product says, you can go through the Plan Development District. They come
Okay.
to you at Planning and Zoning. They go through staff, make sure you can drain it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And so
So-
there's already a tool in place for that.
So you're going to be recommending Plan Development District going forward, even though we have all of these set places, like all of these different requirements in place to developers saying, hey, you possibly can do this, but it has to get approved by basically the governing bodies and the public.
There are some developers who are going to be in such a hurry, they're not going to want to go through the PDD process, simply because time is money and the interest monster's always hungry.
Yeah, of course.
And so from that perspective, living within the rules is much easier and cost-effective than trying to go through some variance process that may or may not get them what they want in the end. But the PDD process really is an opportunity for us to, I hate to use the word dictate, but it is dictate.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we want the open spaces to look like, all of the things that we're going to give in a trade-off for that type of density.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to see, honestly, what everyone else's thoughts is on a third versus a quarter.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Last week, I voted no to the third of an acre, and I think a quarter acre will do. It's a great starting baseline, as you use. I like that baseline, because that gives everybody they know they can't go any lower than a quarter of an acre, and the majority of lots in Bastrop in all these planned subdivisions are at least 0.2. So going to a quarter of an acre, that's going to give people some space. I think that's safe.
Commissioner Alborn has something to say as well.
I've had a couple of questions. You know, all these meetings we've been going to the last few months, we're always talking about density, ADUs, quarter, third. How can you put all this puzzle together with ADUs, density, water runoff, and allow ADUs in somebody's backyard? We've got parking problems. If you ride around these subdivisions, there are cars parked in fire lanes because they got nowhere to go. Is my house burning down because somebody parked in some place they can't and fire department can't get there? I don't think we should allow ADUs. It's too dense. We got no parking for all these vehicles. Unless you're gonna lease a third of an acre, setbacks, driveways, 40 feet wide, 80 feet long for people to park. Nobody uses their garage anymore. It's storage or an extra room. So to solve all these problems we have on density, I don't think ADUs even should be considered.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Parsons.
Yeah, Sylvia, I have a question. I don't know if this is a follow-up to what he was saying, but it seems like we have an issue between downtown, I'm going to call the downtown area authentic or whatever we want to call it, historic Bastrop, that we really want to try to protect. So having rules for historic Bastrop versus the rest of Bastrop, I think we've been talking about the fact that that's probably a reasonable idea in terms of some of these issues. Does that get us there? I mean, does that protect historic Bastrop while giving you the flexibility or whatever you need for, development outside of historic Bastrop? Or do we need to have two separate rules?
Well, you're going to end up with more than two separate rules, and so I'm going to face the audience. So historic Bastrop, one of the things that this code tried to do was create a certified local government to protect. And that's okay, except it comes with rules. And so how many of you live in downtown Bastrop? Okay. How many of you live in an actual historic home that is designated historic? Okay. Everybody else who didn't raise their hand under a certified local government would have to follow rules very similar to what is protecting the historic homes. That becomes very difficult for somebody who's just trying to change out a window or trying to change out a door or those kinds of things. So that was deemed unconstitutional and not correctly approved. So that was set aside. What we're looking at is a historic district overlay into Old Town Bastrop that gives people relief from windows and doors and all that other good stuff. I'm not checking swatches of paint. I'm not doing those kinds of crazy things. So yes, we are going through that. We're also looking at a black historic district off of Pine and Walnut. So yes, there are things to do. Right now, as Commissioner Scott stated, the only protection that we have is with the reduction of impervious cover that we need. But that doesn't do anything for space. Somebody can still divide the lot and build, put a tiny home on a relatively small piece of property. So the third of an acre was the quote unquote average as where we determined we're not opposed to a quarter of an acre. It's still a 10,000 square foot lot. I just want to make sure that we're all cognizant as we move through the ADU discussion, because I got super beat up last time about Sylvia doesn't like affordable housing. That's not true, because it's not going to be affordable if the city continues to raise its fees and taxes to be able to account for now the drainage and the new water and the new sewer and things that I need.
Okay, so my question is, if we do this, does it protect?
Yes.
Historic Bastrop,
Yes.
but allow the flexibility for the rest of the city?
Yes.
Or do we need to have two separate rules?
No,
Okay.
for today, this works.
Commissioner Elborn?
Has anybody ever determined actually what is affordable housing in Bastrop?
If they can, they haven't talked to me.
Well, if you look at if you listen to the news and people, the segment of affordable housing is 330,000 or below. And there aren't many people who can afford that at current rates at 6.5 on the mortgage. And you look at the real estate taxes that are currently in Bastrop are well over 6,000. So where is this magical number of affordable housing?
I don't have an answer to that. We tried to solve that puzzle at the workforce meeting that we had, at the economic development meeting that we had earlier today. And the answer is there is none. And so what developers try to deem as affordable is go into a place where there's already a water and sewer line. That's only half the puzzle, because there are still some upgrades to the lines, and according to the law, I can only charge impact to that particular development to a certain point in time. The rest of that cost is spread to the rest of the residents. And so I've been accused of being a fearmonger. I've been accused of a whole heck of a lot of things. And I'm going to say, yes, I'm afraid. I'm afraid we're going to become Austin, and quick.
So I will give my opinion on this. About 20 years ago, there was the Mueller subdivision being developed in Austin. I'm not sure if anyone around here remembers when that was happening. My mother, she owned a hair salon in Austin, and she had an opportunity to move her salon from North Lamar over into the business complex right over in that area across from Dale Children. And so in that, going to the meeting, she saw this, they were going to do this development, first-time home buyers, all these different programs. Well, there are a lot of things about it that I like, just being excited, be a first-time homeowner, right? I just started working for the city of Austin, having a family, just wanting to get something and not be in an apartment. But my roots were always here, right? But I'm like, maybe we can make something happen. But I wasn't super thrilled on the setup of that development over there. I think it was great for families, I think it was great for a certain type of person, but it wasn't for me because it didn't adhere to what was in my soul about Bastrop, right? And so when I became a commissioner on the P&Z, seeing this, the B3 and learning things and going, it really reminded me of that subdivision. And again, I'm just saying, for me personally, that did not speak Bastrop to me. I did not feel like I was going to be at home, even if I would have bought a home. I wasn't fully committed to that. And so I'm saying that a lot of things in this B3 remind me of that neighborhood. And so I know on my part, I'm here to make sure that we do not look like Mueller. All right, thank you. Yes. So, it was brought to my attention. I'm going to open the public hearing up one time for Ms. Green. She also wanted to speak during the presentation. So, my apologies, Ms. Green. I'm going to open it up for you to come and speak. Opening up the public hearing for agenda item 8A.
Hello, Heather
Hello.
Green, 2007 Pecan Street. Thank you for listening to me again. I do have a couple of things that were brought to my attention that I wanted to talk about and just ask. One of the things was the flooding specifically. We flooded back in 2016, and both my sister and my mother lost her car. So I don't see how putting 43 houses in a lot that's right behind there would allow for anything other than everybody to end up with flooded houses and flooded cars. And for you to say that Riverside and you live in Riverside and you don't understand the lots are perfect, there's a reason that us in downtown Bastrop don't live in Riverside. We like our lots. We like that they are big. We like that we have space. We do not want small lots. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying there's a reason that we live in what is considered historic Bastrop. We like our lots. We have been there for 30 years. My neighbors have all been there for longer than that, most of them for longer than I've been alive. And the way that we found out about the fact that they were putting 43 houses on the lot behind us was that you guys showed up on a school bus. We were not given notice. Nobody told us. You showed up on a school bus and we asked what's going on. Oh, we're looking at developing. It's not okay. It's not okay for that to be the way that we find out. And I also have concerns because I was recently told that the lady who owns that property and owns the other lot that has everybody in an uproar because she wants to put 2 duplexes is somehow related to someone on our city council. And so I have concerns about how this was somehow grandfathered in and it's okay for her to build those 43 lots and everybody's upset about the other 2 duplexes or 4 duplexes going right behind the gas station, but nobody seems concerned on the other one, and it got passed underneath before everybody got really, really upset, and it's convenient because maybe she's related to someone who happened to tell her that it was coming. So I just have some serious concerns about how we are. I want you guys to understand that there's a reason that my family has lived in that house for as long as we have. It's because we love our neighbors. And I can't say there's only one other neighbor here because the rest of them are elderly. And I don't know that they are fully aware of what is currently going on because, like I said, we were told because you showed up on a school bus. I just want to make sure that everything is fully addressed with all of that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Green.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Again, she brought it up. I've brought it up. I'm pretty sure Gary brought it up too. But downtown, you're right. You folks have owned those lots some of them have owned them for a century, and they've been that certain size. This rule that we're making right now is not going to affect your lot, but where she lives, the old rule is what's causing this, and that's why we have to correct it. But again, I agree with them. We really need to make a distinction between historic Bastrop and the rest of the developments. And I know it gives the other builders a chance to go through the planned development process. But, and the reason I say a quarter acre is just because, I don't know, I sell real estate, and if I was to give a percentage, I'd say at least 70% of the lots in Bastrop are a quarter acre. But that's just my opinion. I'm going to go with the majority here. If we need a third. Now, 0.33 is bigger than 0.3. And then 0.25 to 0.33, that's almost an extra 0.1, right? So somewhere maybe in the middle, 0.28, I don't know. Do we need to just find a middle ground? What do y'all think?
I think a middle ground is a
So you wouldn't
great
leave a
idea.
remnant lot. You wouldn't leave a remnant lot. So you wouldn't go 3.3, and then like leave a 0.1 that just,
Right.
yeah.
That's why if we go to an even number, you don't have to worry about 0.33, 0.33, 0.34.
All right, commissioners. Jordan, Mr. Commissioner Scott, you got anything?
Are we making a motion tonight to make a recommendation, or is this, okay?
So I have a question about
okay.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
If we go with your recommendation, what does that do if I'm a developer and I want to offer some lots with bigger homes, more bedrooms, more money, and then also offer some smaller homes on smaller lots that would be more affordable for other folks? That would kind of screw that pooch, wouldn't it?
No, you go under a planned development district.
Okay.
Let's not forget that this is just a baseline that we're talking about here. So, I mean, it's just how you want to look at it. If you do the 1/3 of acre, then you got a situation where you can put 3 lots on an acre. Otherwise, you go quarter, it's 4. If we're concerned about density, it's a no-brainer. It's a third.
We have minimum road frontage requirements, correct? Because I think really a third, we don't have minimum road frontage requirements, because
No, sir.
if we're looking at an acre lot, right?
You have
really
a-
where you can only chop that up into 4 different lots, and especially in the downtown area, is if it's a corner lot or if we don't have road frontage, because you'd have to create shotgun quarter-acre lots.
We do not have a road frontage. What we have is a driveway minimum. 20 to 25 feet, 20 feet for residential. So theoretically, you could create a flag-shaped lot that has 20-foot driveway access and a really long, skinny flag. The prior code outlawed that. This one inadvertently left it off.
Okay,
And
but
so,
it's still allowed now without the minimum lot. I'm just saying, like, I'm looking at these bigger developments that are coming into Bastrop, because there are these one-off small acre or like he's saying, acre lots in the downtown area. If it hasn't been an issue in the past 5 years, which it doesn't seem like it has with the lack of restrictions that we have now, I don't see why we need to be so concerned about setting it at a third versus a quarter. I'm just looking at what looks feasible, what looks great, and I think a quarter acre is more than enough as far as a minimum requirement. I think a third is just a little too harsh to force developers to go through a PDD just to get it down. If they're trying to go under a quarter, absolutely, because, I mean, 0.1, 0.15 that they have now, they're pretty, that's what we want to avoid. But with the increased road size and all the other stuff that we're doing, I think a quarter is more than enough.
I'll argue the point. Think about the size of a quarter acre. If you want an ADU on that, having a third, you could put an ADU on the back of this thing for affordable housing. This is just a baseline. Anybody that's going to develop it coming into Bastrop, they're not going to go with this code completely, because they're going to develop it through a PDD. That's what they do. And this is to protect, as much as we can, the downtown Bastrop. Everybody needs to understand that your rights, your property rights end at your line of your property, and the others that owns it next door, they have rights also in that situation. So this is a way to protect it. I think the best is a third of an acre.
Well, you're not really protecting against ADUs, because if you're setting the minimum as a third, and
not
our
talking
only
about
protection is
protecting against
lot
ADUs.
coverage. Well, if you're setting your minimum lot coverage to a third, and our only protection against ADU is lot coverage, then having the minimum requirement a third would provide more property for ADUs.
Yes.
So if we had it at a quarter, even if they did a quarter acre would be better in that regard, because now you're only doing 1 ADU instead of 2 on a third.
I don't understand why we have such a hair trigger problem with ADUs if we can abide by all the rules
I don't have a problem.
around the ADUs, the rules we've already put in place recently.
Well, a quarter of an acre is going to make it more difficult to put an ADU on it.
Yeah,
because of
I
the
understand. A
shot
third of
size
an
of the
acre, a
lot.
third of an acre at least makes it possibly feasible.
Yeah.
So I think that gives property owners the right to consider doing something with their property. I mean, And I also do think that it would, increase the opportunity for more affordable housing, whatever that means. Sylvia, do you know what size the lots are and where I live out in Pecan Park? Do you have any idea?
0.19 and less. Some of your stuff is 4,500, 4,000.
Yeah. Well, I live there, folks, and I got to tell you, it's really tight. I love my neighborhood. I love my neighbors. I'm happy I live there, but it is really tight. And we're all packed in there pretty close. It's a good thing we all like each other. But it's, the parking really becomes a nightmare when there's smaller lots, just because you've got the same amount of people moving into these homes and less place to park their cars. So I'm for, going with a little bit larger size myself.
All right. So, sounds like everyone's, Commissioner
I had one
Elmore.
question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any guidelines, controls over knockdowns inside Bastrop in the older section we're always talking about? If somebody's got an old home sitting on an acre, do we have any regulations controlling if they want to knock that down and build around it?
There's a little bit of regulation, and that's, is it historic in nature because of person, place, thing, et cetera, and in which case it goes to the Historic Landmark Commission. But if it's not a significantly protected house with a marker, it becomes very difficult, especially if the property owner says that the cost to rehabilitate is going to exceed the value of the house, et cetera, which is what happened at the Pecan Street house.
In previous experiences, the idea was to, if they had a large lot, they wanted to develop it, they wouldn't let them do it. And they said, like you said, that the property is not worthy of rehab. What they would do is, all right, you have to, or you can knock it down, but you have to leave 2 exterior walls and the original footing or foundation, and then you build from that.
No, we don't. We don't have that rule.
It would help.
To keep the,
Yeah, because then you build around it and it maintains the size of the lot, and it doesn't get developed into 2 or 3.
retain the existing footprint.
Yep.
Oh, got it,
And you
got
don't
it.
get the ADUs crowding the backyard. Which goes back to the things we always talk about, parking on streets.
That's why we need at least a third of an acre so you can have parking.
Yeah. It's a 3-point turn to get out of the driveway.
Commissioner Toth.
Sylvia, I'm gonna ask a question. I apologize. I asked last week, but because I'm not quite sure I understood your answer correctly. But let's talk about authentic Bastrop. And somebody owns right now 0.6 of an acre, but their home is located on one side of the lot, and there's a big empty vacant space that they'd like to subdivide to turn into another home. My understanding is that they are still governed by the minimum lot size that will exist when we pass this, or that the council passes after a recommendation. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we decide on 0.25, they can subdivide their property.
Correct.
If we decide on 0.33 and their lot size is 0.6, they cannot. Is that
Correct.
correct? All right, thank you.
Unless you write in some sort of administrative relief, which we're not proposing. I mean, there's a way to go through zoning board of adjustment. There's a way to ask for appeals and variances. That's not something I would recommend. Now, inversely, if you have a 0.19 lot, no, you can't subdivide it any further.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Anyone have a recommendation? Anyone? Who has one?
I wanted to start with a motion to recommend to set the minimum lot size at a quarter lot and see where we're at with that. For P3 zone.
All right. Well,
I'm at a third. So
Well,
you're going to vote on.
okay.
I'm a third.
So he's got to have a second. One of you guys will need to have a second for your.
I think we have to determine.
We have to. Motion.
Commissioner Scott has a motion for a quarter of a
Quarter.
lot. He's looking for a second.
He's looking for a second.
Oh, sorry.
All right,
Motion dies for lack of second.
all right.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead. Can you get your mic turned on for us,
I can
please?
do
Thank
that,
you, sir.
sorry. Got it covered there. I'd like to motion that we recommend to the City Council on amending the Bastrop Code of Ordinance related to Chapter 14, the Bastrop Building Block B3 Code, Section 6.3.008, Lot Occupation, establishing standards for minimum lot size in P2 and P3, Section 6.5.003, Building Standards per Place Type, by establishing standards for the minimum lot size in P2 and P3, and Section 2.4.001, non-conforming use and structures to indicate non-conforming lots, be a third of an acre for P3 and an acre for P2.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Alondra?
Sorry. Yes. Keith Osborne.
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Chris Toth.
Yes.
Jordan Scott. No. Gary Moss.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, can we let the record show that the recommendation passes, the motion passes 6-1? Thank you. All right, now we're going to move to another agenda item. Yes. We're going to move to agenda item 12, duplex in P2 and P3. We're going to consider an act amending the Bastrop Building Code Block B3 code by adding section 2.4.0051, conditional use permit to allow duplexes in the P3 zone where certain conditions can be met, and moved to include on the March 4th, 2025 special city council agenda for the second reading. And then we also have 12B, conduct a public hearing to consider an act to amend the Bastrop Code of Ordinances related to Chapter 14, the Bastrop Building Block B3 Code, Article 6.5, building types by removing duplexes as an allowable building type from P2 and P3, Section 6.5.001, permitted building types per place type by removing duplexes from P2 and P3. Madam City Manager.
So, thank you, Chair. So, for the audience, how many of you know the house that was torn down in Pecan and some fourplexes are intended to go in its place? I will remind the audience again that we're not under a traditional zoning code in Bastrop. We are under a form-based code. That means if it looks the same, it's okay to do it. And so we don't have traditional quote-unquote uses. We have what are called building types. And so the argument is, so what if they build a duplex? So long as we make it look like Pecan Street Inn, or so long as we make it look like the houses on that street, why do you care? Well, we care for the obvious, right? We care about the density. So we're gonna touch on tree penalties here in a minute too, because I got you there too. We're like gonna hit them with it. So the Planning Commission came back and said, maybe that's not fair for everybody. And I will tell you that we have less than 2 lots in the entire city zone P3 where a duplex exists. So we're not hitting a lot of people, quote unquote, in the grandfathering. But there is that discussion about, well, what if I own a P3 and it's big enough and I want to put a duplex on it because me and my daughter, me and whoever want to live on the lot. And so there's no way to do that in the current code other than leave it the way it is and allow duplexes to go where they are, which everybody's told me, no, don't do that. We've got to go through the conditional process. And what does that mean? That means the residents around that lot get notice. Ms. Green said we didn't get notice until we showed up on a school bus. I love that you said that because I've been beat up about, you're doing this too fast, you're doing this too fast, you're doing this too fast. I'll tell you that we've had a mobility tour, we've did a community tour. These commissioners have been drug around with me. We've done 18 months of this process. And I can't tell you the amount of people who are really interested that this code stay the same. And we're not trying to make it stay the same. So I got to do something that gives people some relief. But I also want to protect the neighbors in doing that, and that's through the conditional process. That means you're going to go through what is a rezoning. You'll notify the neighbors. The neighbors get to show up. The neighbors get to agree to the Planning Commission whether or not they want to allow a duplex next to them. Now, this gets to be a very slippery slope that I'm sure Mr. Senna can attest to is I don't want to talk about, we're not going to want those things because of nuisances, right? I don't want to talk about don't allow it there because they have a dog that barks all the time. But let's be realistic. I don't want them to flood my neighborhood with light pollution. I don't want them to do certain things. I don't want a lot of impervious cover. I don't want a lot of driveways. I don't want a lot of things. So as a neighborhood, this proposal is a way that meets in the middle, that it allows a duplex if and only if the neighbors within 200, or they can change it to 500 tonight, agree to allow that use. Again, we're beginning to deviate from a form, a building type, into more a use. And the intent of these two is to prevent our single-family zones from becoming multifamily. We're already allowing additional dwelling units, one by right, if you can park it, drain it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Continuing to allow duplexes in single-family zones begins to continue to erode that single-family zone, and that's what we're trying to protect. So, Commission, this is the first time you're going to hear a conditional use permit. You sent me to the drawing board. You said figure out a way to make it happen. Believe it or not, the old code, this is lifted from the old code. I changed very minimal of it. So for those who want to vilify the old code, this is a lift from the old code. Specifically, it was in place before, it worked before. So we're just bringing it back. And then 12B is, so 12A would change that use from not permitted to CUP, meaning there's a process it would have to go through. And, we'd have to post it in the paper, just like we would a zoning case. 15 days, property owner notification, recommendation from the P&Z to the city council. City council gets to read it. And then the other thing is zoning board of adjustment should not have any jurisdiction over conditional use permits. And why? Because we'll tie it up in court. Zoning board of adjustment is a quasi-judicial board. You take me through zoning board of adjustment denies it, the applicant has the right to district court immediately. We don't even pass go. You'll tie me up in court forever. So I'm just trying to be cognizant of taxpayer money and how much we pay the lawyers. So that would take us to 12B, duplexes in the P2. Still not allowed in the P2. That is our rural designation. Can you imagine how many you can put out there if you can meet the impervious cover limit? And it would defeat any type of rural designation. And then in P3, only allowed under a conditional use. And so the council and the Planning and Zoning Commission would give some sort of parameter as to what that is. I'm going to assume so long as you can drain it and you're within your impervious cover, your neighbors don't disagree, and by the way, the neighborhood, if more than 20% of the neighborhood comes up in arms, it has to have a supermajority. So things get harder the more people don't want those things to be approved. And so that is the recommendation. No in P2 and only allowed in P3 under a conditional use permit that has a lot of public hearing.
Can I make a point of order? It might be best on this particular item, rather than open meeting on it, is to have a discussion between us so that they know what our thought process in this before they make comments on it. Then you can open it up before we make any motion to move forward. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, what you got?
Quick question on ADUs for a situation like this with having a duplex on a third acre type. Would they still be able to do an ADU on that?
Yes, but we could absolutely write in the conditional use that no ADU if you have a duplex.
Yeah. Okay.
Say that again? I'm sorry.
So right now an ADU is allowed quote unquote by right, so long as you can park it, drain it, et cetera. And so Commissioner Moss's question was, would they be able to do an ADU if we allow a duplex? And the answer is the commission would have the ability to say, no ADUs, we've already given you a duplex.
Right.
Got it, okay.
In lieu of.
In lieu of, yes.
I have a question. Does everybody know what a P2 and a P3 is? Can you tell them what a P2 and a P3 is?
We may have a map. So we're going to pull up a map. Most of historic Bastrop is in the P3 zoning designation. P2 is what you're going to find up in Hoffman, Laura Lane, the larger lot subdivisions. And that is a reality simply because folks didn't have access to wastewater at a particular point in time. And so the lots had to be larger in order to have septic systems associated with them. As the city developed and we grew bigger, and we're able to extend water and wastewater, those lot sizes shrunk. Current state law is if you have access to a water line, you can put a septic if your lot is half an acre. And so obviously we want you to tie into water sewer. It's much easier, it's cleaner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what Andres has put up is it'll show most of the city under what we're calling a P3. And we took an average of every lot in the city that is zoned P3, and that's where we came up with the third of an acre. Off of 21, you're probably going to find P2, which is rural, 1 acre.
So P2 means what, Sylvia? Means rural?
P2 means rural.
Okay,
That is our
P3 means?
single-family residential.
Thank you.
And so are you talking about the subdivision, Addleton subdivision that's super close on 21? It's probably P2, and I'm sorry, I won't take any more questions from the audience. It's probably a P2, but you can get with staff. Vivi will tell you exactly what you're zoned. But when we first, and just so the audience knows, when we first annex into the city, you normally come in as rural. And that's because we don't know what you're going to be when you grow up yet, so to speak. Oh, you're actually P4 because you're on a frontage. You're on a commercial. But Vivi can explain better. Right here.
Okay, just real quick, everyone, so we don't have this happening throughout the night and kind of delay our progress. If you have any comments, please come over here and sign up. If you weren't able to get an agenda for tonight to know what we have, I'm sure we can find a way to get you a copy so you know what's on the agenda tonight. But please take some time to review it, and that way we can have you set up over here, and then I can have it up front, and we'll get you taken care of. Thank you.
So can you explain to me what the cup is exactly, and do we put the restrictions on that, or is that just a form-based?
Actually, a conditional use permit is actually Euclidean-based because it's use-based. But that's the closest thing that I could match to being able to do a duplex in what is a single-family zone. So it's just that, it's a zoning designation, and it is a special zoning designation on the map that if it were to be rezoned, that it would say conditional use. Now, the thing everybody needs to understand about conditional use is it has conditions to it that can be revoked. So it's kind of super scary, but it really makes the developer or the builder keep their word to what they told the residents they would do.
Can you give us an example?
An example of a conditional use permit? So the house on Pecan that got torn down, where right now the proposal is a quadplex, actually. It could be that the commission says, we may not allow a quadplex, but we're okay with the duplex so long as these things apply. 1, no more ADUs. 2, all your parking behind the structure, etc. So you give it conditions. The thing about conditional use permits is, again, they have a condition associated with them. Revocation is hard, but there's a process to revoke.
So do we have to set those conditions?
Yeah, I started to say, so is it just totally up to the commission, willy-nilly, or is there a list?
Believe it or not, right now I'm kind of leaving it willy-nilly because every lot is different. There are some nuisance factors that we want to address no matter what that are already in the code, like lighting and those kinds of things.
Commissioner
Parking.
Toth has something.
Impervious cover, that's all.
Already
Everything that they've already
stipulated.
got is going to apply to that.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Commissioner Toth?
Yeah, I have a question for Sylvia. Just for some of the folks that weren't here last week, there were some of us on the P and Z that were ready to vote on this last week, and there was a motion to send it back to you. I'm not convinced. I think partly it was a 4.5-hour hearing, so I'm not convinced. There was opposition, or at least a majority opposition, to your original proposal that duplexes would not be allowed in P3 period. So here's my question. So having said all that, what do you as the city manager believe is in the city's best interest in terms of no duplexes at all in P3 or duplexes allowed with a conditional use permit?
No duplexes allowed.
So would this just take duplexes away from downtown Bastrop altogether?
Yes.
Okay.
In the P3 zones.
In the P3 zones, right? Because that is what I've been asked as well. So there's some clarification. Thank you. Yes, I was just deciding if I wanted to ask you another question or not, but we'll open the public hearing.
More question.
Okay, go ahead.
Not that I'm trying to be a troublemaker tonight.
Tonight.
Can't promise next time, but tonight. So what does that do when we start thinking about making some residences affordable? I mean, it would seem to me, and maybe I'm wrong in my thinking here, that if we have what would be a single-family home, if it could be made a duplex, that it could be that 2 families could live there and afford it.
Well, I'm going to say that we have zones, and again, there's already tools. We have a duplex subdivision coming in at Valverde, right at 969 and 71. It's a duplex subdivision. Right behind it will be single-family homes. There's already tools for that to happen. What we're saying is where it exists today, let's give the neighbors some predictability about what's going on next to them.
All right, so this is downtown.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Estes.
So we're going to vote to ban duplexes in P2 and P3. So that's, we can see that's on 2B, right? 12B. And all we're trying to do here is to say the conditional use permit. We're adding that basically to this situation. Is that correct?
You are creating a new tool called a conditional use permit, period, regardless of what you allow in the duplex,
So
period.
let's say there's a section in town where 2 houses are abandoned, and someone comes in and says, I want to buy these 2 old houses, and I want to tear them down, and I want to put in a duplex. They come to the city to do a CUP, correct? A CUP.
If that would have been approved, I think what Commissioner Toth is saying is no duplexes at all in the P3.
Right, but if it's approved, let's say it's approved. So let's say this is approved,
Yes.
the CUP, that they're going to have to come to the city
Yes.
and ask, and then the city is going to say yes or no.
The city will notify the neighbors first,
Right.
just like we would in a rezoning
So
case.
we're giving people the right to try. Right now, if we don't vote on the conditional, we're just taking that away from everybody, anybody and everybody. Because, you know, if it's 2 old houses that just need to go and everybody knows they need to go, and someone puts in a nice duplex there and all the neighbors say, yeah, sure, that's no problem. I don't see a problem for leaving it just in case. You know, what is the possibility that this may come up? And somebody's like, oh, I can't do this with my land. And then if all the neighbors say no, you're still set. There's so many protections with that CUP. So I thought it was a great idea that you threw that back in there, just in case. just in case. Now, everybody else may have a different opinion of it on me, but I like having another exit door.
So
You know.
I will say, currently duplexes are also allowed in P4.
Sure, tonight we're only talking P2 and P3. Yes, and P4 begins to be our commercial.
So that neighborhood that's going in right now, that is a duplex neighborhood, those zones are P3 currently, correct? Or did they rezone it to P4 for that neighborhood?
So they came in as a P2 and they rezoned. You'll have to remind me, did they rezone to a?
To a P5.
Oh,
For
P5.
Valverde?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To a P5.
Okay.
Sylvia, I was thinking about something earlier. Could you explain to everybody in the audience exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it? I don't think a lot of people don't understand that what we do here tonight is just a suggestion, a recommendation to the city council. Yep. And so it would be, if you could explain, because I think it gets lost, because staff does all this work right here and brings it to us. We go through it and we send it to the council. There's so many times, if you're unhappy about the process or you're unhappy about what's going on, this is not the final
Right.
end. And we're not.
This is
we're
not the
voting
end
on
all
it.
be all to the
No,
decisions
We're just
that are
voting to
made.
recommend to the council. They have the opportunity to say no and change it, and they have, which is not very bright on their part, but anyway, I'm just saying.
Correct.
Did you understand, because I don't think a lot of people really understand sometimes exactly how this whole process goes from here to there.
Okay.
And that might be helpful to better
Sure.
understand it.
So planning and zoning is a recommending body. There are rules to planning and zoning. So if a majority of this board, this commission says no to something, it requires a supermajority of council, meaning, 4 out of the 5 have to be in agreement. So there are some quote unquote protections for the neighborhood. This commission has the ability to take staff's recommendation. They have the ability to modify staff's recommendation. They have the ability to send up some other different recommendation on their own. I come from a place where my planning commission was made up of, no offense, Commissioner Estes, realtors, real estate developers, and title company presidents. You can imagine what they would send to council. But then my council was title company presidents also. So therein lies where I know this fast, slippery slope can come to. So this commission is a recommending body. Council should and often does take the recommendation simply because they go through public hearings like this and they hear you and they hear the discord. So it's important that it not be generalized and put off to the side. So these folks do their homework. We sent out over a 400-page packet, I believe, 700 pages the other day. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. If the commissioners don't have anything else, I'm going to just mind you, there's item 12A and 12B, so it's going to be 2 public hearings, okay? So you're going to make 2 motions with your recommendations, all right? So I'm going to open up the public hearing for agenda item 12A. I have Pablo Serna who wishes to come up and speak. Mr. Serna, I believe you know the routine.
1104 Hill Street, Bastrop, Texas, about 2 blocks from here. If you possible, go back to that lot where you got the average number to determine the .33. I want to point out to the commission here that you still haven't really addressed density. You've addressed square footage, but you have not really addressed density. And if I were a developer, I would know that. And right now, you've addressed density to the point of 9 units per acre, because if it's a third, it's 3 per, that's 3 primary dwelling units. But if they can each add, maybe I've done that wrong. No, they can each add 2 duplexes. And you can do that without increasing impervious cover just by putting it on top of your garage. And I added up all of that one. That's 2.29 acres. So if you multiply that by 9, that's 20 dwelling units that could exist on that block. So you really haven't addressed density. And that's what I'm pointing out to you as someone that's worked in development for 30 years as an architect. I can tell you right now, this is an easy math problem. That's the first thing we do, is we look at that and we divide it up. And so I I think you need to really consider, and I know I've spoke to Sylvia about that and her staff, dwelling units per acre is your tool. And that would allow a variety of housing types. You can have duplexes, you could have primary dwelling unit at 1, you could have duplex at 2, you can have ADU at 0.5, and if you set this at that, right now I'm counting 6 houses. If I were to set that dwelling unit, and that's 2.29 acres, that's almost 3 per acre. If I were to set that as a number and someone were to tear down a house, because that's what's going to happen, this is infill development, they will tear down the house that's not really worth saving, and then they're going to max out, right? If you've only set the limit to square footage, that's an easy problem to solve, and you can stick 3 units right on that little thing. So I just want to point out to you that I would hope that the next round, this is like you said, Gary, it's a start. And I agree, it's a good start, and that the problem with the B3 code was it was actually based on what was here. There's duplexes, there's townhomes, they're all over Bastrop. Just drive around and you'll see we have a variety of lots, and small lots and big lots. So the B3 was just taking off that, but it was naive in thinking that development would respect the neighbors, and it's not really doing that. So we need to think about it, and I really think the tool that will control this, will control it at an acre level, is density unit per acre. It's really, other towns do it. I've seen it. When I know it's that, then I do the math differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cerner. All right, we have up next David Nichols would wish to speak on item 12A. Did he step outside? I think he was sitting behind. Right, I know, but did he? Okay. Can someone? Is Mr. Nichols out there? He is right there. He's up. All right, he decided not to talk. All right, thank you. All right, I don't have anyone else that wishes to speak on this agenda item. I'm going to close agenda item 12A, the public hearing on it. All right.
Okay, so I have a question, Sylvia.
Yeah, I'm gonna do both of them. Yes. I'm gonna go through 12B real quick.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm gonna open up the public hearing for 12B. I do not have anyone that wishes to sign up for it. So I'm gonna close the public hearing. All right, thank you. Commissioner
So,
Parsons.
I hear what Pablo's saying and hear what you're saying. If we vote on something tonight and we do some more considering about it or consideration about it, can we come back and change it? Or are we like locked into this and
No.
we're going to have to go through a big fight again forever and ever and ever?
No. Here's my issue with what Mr. Cerna is proposing. He wants to do it on I wish he was here. He wants to do it on a per block level. Every block in Bastrop is completely different. And so if you are the last block who develops because your son or daughter has come home from college, I get to tell you no. And then we run into disparate treatment and discrimination. We run into a bunch of things. It is much easier at this level. We have other protections. I mean, his points about you can do this many, no, that's not true, because we have other protections such as impervious cover, the number of parking spaces per bedroom, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been slowly putting protections into place. If Bastrop was a perfect grid, yes, absolutely, that would work, but it's not. And so I don't want to get into I'm going to allow it for you, but I'm not going to allow it for her. Because you two look different, and then she's going to tell me you didn't allow it for me because I'm different than her, and, we get into all of that.
Okay, I got it. I'm just wondering if I would like to set up an appointment with you to have more conversation about this, because I don't totally understand what you're saying. If what Pablo is saying is that it's based on an acre, dwelling units per acre, then I just need you to explain. I need you to explain your position to me a little bit better, because I don't understand it.
It's a way to control ADUs from not happening.
He's talking about units per lot.
He's talking about units per acre. So let me give you an example.
Per acre.
This particular has 6 units. And so if we set the density at 9 units per acre, I think that was his number. right? 9 units per acre. Then only 3 of those lots get an ADU. So that's 9 units an acre, right?
So
Or
they're
actually, that's 2
okay.
2 acres. So that's a method of control. And so what this commission and the council said is, we want ADUs by right if you can meet certain requirements. To go to a density per acre means I'm going to, if everybody on that block decides to do that, I'm going to end up telling somebody no. And it's usually the last person in line.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. Doesn't necessarily mean I understand it, but I hear what you're saying.
All right, does anyone else have any discussion? Yes, sir, Commissioner Scott.
We feel good about the conditional use permit. We like how it looks.
Yeah.
Because what I like about that versus someone going for a rezone is that if they go for a rezone, then they can do whatever they want on the property versus if they want to throw in a duplex on a property, they're held to the standard, hey, you have to do this or else. Yes, exactly. Because if someone wanted to go for a duplex, they would just go for a rezone, and then that opens the jar for a ton of different developments if they approve a P4, which I would assume they would go for. So I'm okay with giving them the option of a P3 if the neighbors are okay.
I'll make a motion then.
All right, well, I was going to suggest he make the motion for 12A since he just gave a good description on his opinion of it, so.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion on 12A.
Yeah, you can read it as they have it there, and that'll
I'd like
work
to
just
make
fine.
the recommendation to add conditional use permits, what is this? Oh, to section 2.4.0051. To allow otherwise restricted uses in certain districts where certain conditions can be met and move to include, to include on the March 4th, 2025 special city council agenda for the first reading.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Ms. Alondra, can you call for roll, please?
Yes, Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris,
Yes.
Keith Alborn,
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons,
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that passes unanimous. Can we get a motion on item 12B, please? Commissioner Moss, Commissioner Scott, do y'all have any motions in you over there?
I got it.
All right, Commissioner Estes.
Okay. To make a recommendation to the City Council to amend the Bastrop Code of Ordinance related to Chapter 14, the Bastrop Building Clock B3 Code, Article 6.5, Building Types, by removing duplexes as an allowable building type from P2 and allowing a conditional use in P3.
I will second that.
I think there
We have a motion and a second. Can we call for roll, please?
Yes, Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris,
Yes.
Keith Alborn,
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons,
Yes.
and Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, it passes unanimous.
So, Commission and audience, I want to clarify something that Councilmember Fossler has raised. I've been saying ADUs are allowed by right, and the exact wording is you can have up to 2 if you can meet the conditions. So 6 one way, half dozen the other, Councilmember Fossler? It gets worse because you can have up to 2.
All right. So we wanted to make sure that we got those 2 major items out of the way. We're going to move back to. Are we waiting? Okay. All right. Well, we'll do that when we don't want to keep everyone waiting. I know it got a little long. Okay. I don't have any comments on it, but we will move on to Grid Streets. That is, oh, where's my paper? Here in my face. 4A. No, it's 7A. All right, we're going to move to Grid Streets. 7A. Yes, sir. Item 7A, we're going to conduct a public hearing to consider an act to remove all references to the gridded street network and replace with the previously adopted Chapter 5 thoroughfare plan and move to include on the March 4, 2025 special city council agenda for the first reading. A.M. Andreas.
Yes, sir. Chair, Commission. My name is Andreas Rosales. I'm the Assistant City Manager, and we're going to talk about grid streets. We're going to start with 7A. 7A is talking about the gridded network requirement as it relates to Chapter 5 of the thoroughfare plan. And so we're asking, our goal in this is to remove the gridded street network. We're going to reduce the number of public streets that the grid network requires. And we're going to, by doing this, we're reducing the cost of street maintenance. And so this also allows some flexibility for developers to meet the intent of the code as it's to create connectivity within their development. The issue that we see is the topography and land acquisition makes this difficult to comply with, as well as some of the downtown grid. So the downtown grid, we're going to focus on keeping that as a grid and network. Within the code, that table will stay at 7.4 within the B3. It will stay. And you have the ability to stay with that grid network, the 330-foot by 330-foot grid. You can also deviate from that and go higher or go lower. That will still stay. This creates some public streets right now that is maintained by the city. And so we talked about last time that 1 mile of road is about $1 million to maintain. And so that comes out to be pretty significant when you're asking developers to put a ton of streets. So what are we talking about? So in 2019, this was the Texas, the Transportation Master Plan grid overlay. As you can see, all the white lines was the grid that was added in 2019 as a part of the B3 adoption. What we're looking to prevent is the Alta Trails apartments. This is the apartments over in Pearl River. You've heard us talk a lot about these, but the red here is a street that's put in by requirement. This is the grid. As you can see, there's a grid here, 330, 330, and then this is a public street here. And so this is a complex, an apartment complex, and by requirement, the complex was required to put a public street in the middle of an apartment complex between buildings. And so us everyday citizens will probably never drive this street. And so the city is now required to maintain for the life of this development that street, even though it would be mainly used by these apartment complexes. And so that is the grid. That's how the grid's lined out. So what we're asking is to go back to the 2017 thoroughfare map, which is this one here. The thoroughfare map that was put in place does contemplate a whole bunch of stuff. The other thing I wanted to talk about is last time we talked about standards. So by going and reversing backwards to 2017, we're going to maintain those standards that were put in place in 2017, the street widths, all of that information that was in the 2017 code, that comes forward. We're going to use that. The other comment I heard was about Blakey. So Blakey was in 2008, before this map was put in place, before B3, before everything. So that Blakey was already in ground by the time this map or any of the other maps were put into place. One of the other things we're going to do is here soon, we're going to be talking about the master thoroughfare plan, the transportation master plan. We're going to be amending it. We have some code revisions that are going to come forward to match what the county has adopted. The county has adopted their plan. They adopted it in December-ish of 2024. TxDOT has also adopted their new plan, and so we will have to adopt ours to match theirs so that when we come in to take right-of-way for certain future developments, we will have to match theirs. And so right now the problem we have is county is requesting let's say a 80-foot right-of-way or 120-foot right-of-way, but our map only shows whether it's the 2017 or the 2019, either one. If one only shows that we're allowed to take 80 and we need 120, by law, I'm only allowed to take the 80 because that's what my map shows. So we're going to be bringing that forward. We would have to bring that forward regardless of this change. So you'll see that here coming soon. Other than that, any questions? Last time y'all unanimously approved this to move forward.
Right.
Any questions?
Yeah, and just so you know, just because 7B is so much in there, this reason I didn't go through all of them.
No, that's
but
fine.
I can go through them if that makes it easier for you, but it's so much with B
It's
and
up
C.
to you. I can keep talking. You want me to go through
Yeah,
them?
let me go ahead and just read the rest
Sure.
of them, that way we don't mess up your flow.
Go.
Okay. So we also have item 7B, conduct a public hearing to consider an act to amend the Code of Ordinances related to Chapter 14, the Bastrop Building Block B3 Code on the following Article 3.2, Place Type Standards, Section 3.2.001, Allocation and Sequence of Place Type Determination, A2, Article 3.2, Place Type Standards, Section 3.2.002, Neighborhood Regulating Plan, C, Article 4.1, General Section .4.2.001, Character Districts, Descriptions, and Additional Standards. B, 5, 13, 17, and 19, Article 5.2, Development Pattern Standards, Section 5.2.001, Traditional Neighborhood Development, T&D. B, Article 5.2, Development Pattern Standards, Section 5.2.002, T&D Standards, B, C, D, and E. Article 5.2, Development Pattern Standards, Standards, Section 5.2.005, Village Center Development, VCD. B, Article 7.1, Streets and Public Realm, Section 7.1.002, General. D, Article 7.3, Street Types, B1, Section Chapter 10, Section 10.1.002, Definitions, American Grid and Mandatory Street Network, and Executive Summary pages on pages 12 and 22. By removing all references to the Mandatory Street Network, to the Gridded Street Network, and establishing standards and procedures, and move to include on the March 4th, 2025 Special City Council agenda for the first reading. Agenda item 7C, conduct a public hearing to consider an act on Code of Ordinances related to Chapter 14, the B3 Technical Manual, on the following: Article 1.2, Development Procedures, Section 1.2.003, Development Process, C1C, Article 2.3, Neighborhood Regulation Plans, E, Article 2.3, Neighborhood Regulation Plans, Section 2.3.001, Stop 1, Neighborhood Regulation Plans, A through 4, A, 5, B, and 6, by removing all references to the Mandatory Street Network and the Gridded Network, and move to include on the March 4, 2025 Special City Council agenda for the first reading. All right.
All right, thank you, Chair. So we're going to back up 7B. So 7A, 7B, and 7C are all the same. They all talk in reference of the street gridded network. 7B in particular those are all of the code sections or the sections within the Bastrop building or the B3 code. All those code sections are referenced here. And so we're just removing a verb. So there's a word within that document that says gridded or mandatory or street network. That section has that word in there, and that is us changing that word or removing that word. So all of that is, if you open that book, it would be subsection Article 7.1. And so those were the words for that we're amending. That's where they're at. That's what 7B is referencing, the B3 changes. 7C is the gridded streets within the technical manual. So we have another manual that lays out how the streets look and how the development is made. It is in the technical manual. This code here, or this change, references all the codes where all the gridded or network or streets are referenced, and we're asking to amend those. Any questions?
Housekeeping, right?
Pretty much, yes. If you approve A, we would have to do B and C in order to do the housekeeping, yes, to make the code make sense.
Commissioners, do we have any other thing? All right, so I'm going to open up a public hearing for agenda item 7A. I don't have anyone that wishes to speak, but Pablo Serta is in opposition of agenda item 7. You checked the wrong box. I was shocked. Yes, you can. I thought you had enough. That's fine. We can, here, you want to check it off right here? Change it for me? That's fine. Cost you a quarter.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so Pablo Cerner wishes to speak in opposition of agenda item 7. Thank you.
This is my last item, so happy. So 1104 Hill Street, Bastrop, Texas. So of all the items that you are considering, this is the one that has the most historic significance. The B3 code is building Bastrop block, right? It's the building, so it's the block code. And if you look at the historic maps, going back to the 1800s, this was founded on a grid. It was founded on a street network, even before they built it out. And so this is probably the most historically significant item that you are considering. And by removing it, I think what you're doing is you're pulling a pretty important thread in the whole fabric of the historic neighborhoods. Particularly, again, I understand for the rest of town, maybe that's not something we want to do, but I will point out to you, if you can go over to those maps, the 2019 map. If I can go to that map, I can show you. There's the 2019, and I know mandatory, I agree, Andres, that's probably a little heavy, so that was the thinking. We wanted the new parts of town to have a connection to the older parts of town. And so this was an idea, again, a vision. So this was a vision, this was a start. I will point out to you that you don't have to do 330 by 330 on page 87. You can string those together if you put a 20-foot pedestrian way between them, because again, the idea is to have some kind of connectability. So maybe it's recommended, but it will tie into your street types very, very precisely. And so our street types, if you look at Blakey, and I don't have a pointer, but Blakey Lane is in that light blue, right there. Go over to your right. Go to your right. There, right there. That's the one that's the problem right now. And then if you go down, it says primary multimodal, go down on the bottom left. So now go to the 2017 map. All right, 2017, there you go, there it is, 2017. Let's go find Blakey again. Right, over to the right. There it is. Now go up to the upper right, there you go, Collector. The difference in the size of those two streets is about 30 feet. A Collector street, if you have that, chapter 5, is like the size of my neighborhood street. So already immediately, by going back to an older map, you have reduced the size of the streets, especially on Blakey. So if you go back to the 2019, you just remove the grid, I would recommend you do that. So I guess maybe work those two out, commissioners. I'm pointing out a very clear problem you have between the sizes of the streets, because Blakey should no way be a collector. It should be up there, it should be one of those principal arterial or divided streets, or one of the larger ones, because now we know all the houses that are up there. So I can forgive the 2017 map. There was not all of the development on 969. So again, we're running through this really quick. I get it. We don't want to do some things, but think about what you're doing, really.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioners, I will let you know that Blakey is already at 100% design. It is not designed as a collector, and we are going through the master transportation plan as well. What this removes is the grid pattern.
All right. We don't have anyone else signed up to speak, but we do have Melinda Larson. She is in favor of agenda item 7. Thank you. That's closing the public hearing.
We have to make a motion on each.
Yes, sir. We'll
I
have
a
to go
question.
7A,
I have a question.
7B, and 7C. Yes, ma'am.
Again, Sylvia, this will not affect Old Town or historic or
No.
whatever it is we're calling it.
Those grids are already pretty
New
established.
development.
All right, so this has to do with new development.
Correct.
All right, commissioners.
All right.
So I was going to ask you, to
Yes, sir.
Pablo's point, if we're going back to the old map, does that affect how we're going to be designing the streets, like he said? So we're not going to be using that verbiage. We're just going strictly with how the grid's being removed.
The grid is being removed. Blakey was designed not as a collector, simply
Of course.
because of everything that's pressurizing it.
But the
Okay.
grid has already been removed, because that's what we voted on last week, when you weren't here.
No,
Sorry, I had a kid.
so you recommended removing it last week, but today's the official.
Official action.
So would there be any reason to consider just changing the language from recommended or mandatory to recommended so that, that the grid system could be used where it seemed appropriate?
We kept some of that in there. So there is some of the grid that's still staying in the current version. It's just we did remove the word mandatory. There still is a street network. There still is a street layout that is in the 2017 code. There are still references to that. We kept 7.4. We still kept some of the changes. So you could still go with the gridded network. You could go to the 330. You could go all the way up to the 1232. Was it 12 something?
There's a 720, and then the 1232 is the perimeter.
Perimeter, yeah. So you still have that option, yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the amendments as proposed by staff to replace the Chapter 5 thoroughfare plan of 2019 with the previously adopted Chapter 5 thoroughfare plan of 2017.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Commissioner Scott,
Thank you.
we're ready for you. Call roll, please.
Yes, Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris,
Yes.
Keith Alborn,
Yes.
Gary Moss,
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons,
No.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. 6-1 vote. Yes, all in favor. Thank you. All right, on to our agenda item 7B. We're going to open up the public hearing on that. I don't have any comments, so I'm also going to close the public hearing.
Make
All
a
right.
motion, recommend the amendments as proposed by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Did you catch who it was?
Yes.
All right.
Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris,
Yes.
Keith Alborn,
Yes.
Gary Moss,
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
I'm sorry, I'm just now reading this. Hang on. So how is this related to the grid streets? Sorry. It's just taking the same language and?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, it's taking away what you just asked about.
I vote no. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, let the record show it passed 6-1. Thank you. All right, I'm going to open up the public hearing for agenda item 7C. And we do not have anyone that signed up to speak on that item, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners,
I make a motion, we recommend the amendments proposed by staff to remove all references to the mandatory street network and the gridded street network.
we have a motion and a second. Did you catch the second? All right.
Yes, sorry. Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris,
Yes.
Keith Alborn,
Yes.
Gary Moss,
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons,
No.
and Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, can we show that it passed 6-1? Thank you, commissioners. All right, we are going to move on to agenda. We're kind of skipping around to try to accommodate some folks. So we're going to skip around to agenda item 11, tree protection. So we're going to hold a public hearing to consider an act to amend Appendix A, fee schedule for tree mitigation fees and establish penalty for violation and move to include on the March 4, 2025 special city council agenda for the first reading. Mr. Covey.
So good afternoon, Commissioners, public, James Kai, Development Services. Basically, this is again a carryover trying to address the Commission's concern on trying to have strong enough penalties for individuals not following our rules. Basically what we've come up with, we're regulated by the local government code on some authority to do this, but we came up with tonight that we proposed taking before council with your recommendation is going to $400 per caliper inch of, and again, understand protected trees, which were taken before council for the second reading, is now dropped from 13 to 10-inch trees. Based on local government code, we cannot prevent tree mitigation funds being used to replant on the site. So basically what we're saying, person, so here's the penalty part. So did we miss that part? So in your package, looks like, where did I miss it?
Back, it's on the bottom, James.
So I'm going to clarify, I apologize. So what we've done propose on the fee itself, there's a fee category and a penalty categories. Under the fee category is we're proposing the 400 per, again, 1 caliper inch. If an individual does not follow our process as a fee, we're going to double the inches and then multiply it times 400. So if you have, for example, 200 inches of trees, that inches will be doubled to 400. But again, by state law, we can't prohibit them from replacing trees, but at least we've doubled the fee and doubled the inches they got to go back with. So when you have a good heavily treed spot, you'll either get it back in funds or get it back in trees. And then again, we'll work with legal in addressing the concerns of the commission is get the most in penalties above this, which is the section right here. So staff's requesting approval by the commission to take it before city council. Any questions? Thank you.
Just making sure everybody's clear. So we took the recommendation from, what's 250? Can you go back one slide? Recommendation from the Parks Board was 250 per 1 inch caliper. We heard last meeting to take it to 4, right? 400 per inch. So we have taken the 400 per 1 inch, and what we said is so that's the mitigation cost. So if you violate that and you choose not to follow the rules, then you bounce down to the bottom and says, if anybody who commences work and does not comply with the requirements the fee per caliper inch will be doubled. So it would go to $800 per caliper inch for the violation. And then, plus, you go to the next slide, James.
Let me clarify that, Andre. So what we're proposing is we can't deny a person replacing trees. So what we're saying is instead of doubling the fees, we're going to double the inches that we use in calculating the fees, understanding it's going to be double the fee or double the inches of trees to be replaced.
So the next one is based on the violation, then that's where we get into the shall be fined a minimum of $500, but not to exceed $2,000 per incident. And this will be what goes to municipal court, right? What goes to the.
And in clarification, that also, and I apologize, is each tree is a separate incident.
Correct.
And you have a note in your packet. The issue that we run into here is judicial discretion, right? The judge has the ability to say, we're only going to do 500, we're only going to do X, Y, Z. So our hands are tied on the quote-unquote misdemeanor penalty, criminal penalty, but we try to capture it on the caliper inch, and you have some examples in your packet of what that means.
I just want to say thank you very much. Well done.
So I wasn't here last week. I just want to know if our Parks Board is recommending $250, what's the justification for adding $150 or however much more?
We had a lot of folks here who wanted to protect our trees.
Well, it doesn't necessarily protect them. It just makes it more expensive to
and
replant.
this is really...
It's just an additional fee that's going to get passed on to the consumer when doing cost analysis for a rental or whatever development that's going in.
Well, the idea was to make it so painful that they want to follow the rules.
I think it's like any law. It acts as a deterrent. If all people were angels, we wouldn't need laws. But you do need laws to deter people. And what happened at Pearl River showed that what we had in place was not effective enough to deter someone. So the additional penalties act as a deterrent.
Yeah, well, the penalty I understand, but we're looking at a tree mitigation fee that someone that needs to cut down a tree in their yard or wants to take a tree out of their yard, that's going to affect them.
So so what we discussed and what we talked about last time was, the city has an arborist. If you want to do anything, you come to the city, they work things out, and then you go. This is designed or set up for if you just feel like it, don't want to adhere to the rule and do what you want to do, then this is the result. This is not for anybody that follows the rules or goes through the proper
Oh, absolutely.
procedure.
But so the tree mitigation fee, that's a fee that has to be paid to remove a tree on a property in advance, correct?
Correct.
So
but
I have a tree in my driveway that I don't like. It's probably about 20 inches or whatever. If I wanted to take that tree out, now I'm having to pay $400 per caliper inch versus $250.
only if you're developing something on your lot. Number one, our arborists will go out and visit you, and if the tree has to come down, the tree has to come down.
Okay, so, but I'm not developing on my lot, and I
Yep.
want to take a tree out, I have to pay the fee.
No, if you visit our city arborist and the city arborist says the tree is diseased, the tree needs to come
No,
down.
the tree is perfectly healthy, I just don't
Oh,
like it. It's my
yes.
personal property.
Yes, there is a mitigation fee to be paid, but
Yes.
then you also receive a credit of same said mitigation fee to replace a tree.
I don't want to replace the fee. I just want to take the tree out.
Then
So that's what I'm
yes.
saying.
Then yes, you have
Yeah,
a
this
mitigation
is-
fee. to
So
pay.
that's the thing.
This is-
I don't think we're planning on, we don't want the entire city having that mindset to where we just, all of a sudden, everyone says we don't want trees. Because
Well-
then if everyone decides that we don't want trees, then that does not help us with keeping the city cool, does not help us be a tree city, does not help us with the bird city. There's a lot of things that go along with not having trees and having people have that option just to one day say, I don't want trees. We can't afford to have that going down Pecan Street.
Yeah, of course, and I don't think the sentiment in Bastrop is, hey, I want to take out trees. Everyone obviously likes their trees, but like, okay, a storm comes through and knocks one of my main limbs down on my tree that I have in my yard. Now my tree's all lopsided and I don't like it anymore. I want to take it out. It's not dying, but it's just not something that I like or it's appealing to me. Now I'm having to pay an extra $150 personally to take a tree off my own property. I think that's a little ridiculous when the penalty should cover any type of non-adherence to the law. And then, I mean, if the Parks Board's recommending $250, I don't see why we should go above that. It's just from a private level. I mean, I like private property rights, right? If I want to take out a tree a tree in my yard, I should have the right to do so. I'm sure we want to protect the trees and whatnot, and I don't see taking trees out of people's yards an issue. It's not an issue now. It's not. We're just hurting people that we don't need to hurt at this point.
Right. And I
with it
believe
being so
last time
high.
we discussed whether we would have two different penalties for commercial versus residential. Did we not? Was that not part of a discussion?
That was one of the recommendations.
Right, one of the-
Ultimately,
okay.
ultimately you didn't.
Right, but I'm
Sure.
trying to fill
Sure,
him in
if you
on
want to
what was talked
recommend
about.
250 for residential and 400 for. Yes. Yeah.
Can we agree to that? I'm just looking out for the little guy because at the end of the day, a lot of these big regulations, people don't realize it hurts small people that own private property. And it's just more expenses that you have to add, and that's how it is in Austin. It's just more permit fees, more expenses that the average person has to pay to do something to their private property. When in reality, obviously we have a good intention to design this to prevent big developers coming in and grading lots. I don't want that. But also, I want to be able to take out a tree in my yard that could be a hackberry, and I personally don't like them. I want to take it out.
So hackberry's on the list of trees
at
that you
least you
can cut
cannot-
without anything.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
you can get
Yeah.
rid of that guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir,
So-
Commissioner Moss.
I understand that this is a penalty for somebody that doesn't follow our ways. Explain that.
Okay.
What's it cost for somebody to take down a tree?
So let's go back to your prior. So I'm going to do two scenarios. One, you got permission. Two, you didn't get permission. And I'm going to follow Commissioner Scott's thought about a residential at 250, just for grins and giggles. So you've got a 12-inch caliper tree that you have to take out. It's going to be 250 times 12, okay? 250 times 12, assuming it's not one of those trees like a hackberry or invasive species. There's a lot on that list, mesquite trees, hackberries, all kinds of trees that we don't want that you can take out completely. That same money that you pay we have to give you credit for toward a replacement tree. So you took out 12 inches, you're gonna come back and put 6 in. We're only gonna charge you the difference of the 6 and the 12. That's how that fee works. State law says I can't keep you from getting credit for that, which is what happened at Pearl River. Pearl River was able to receive credit for all of the trees they took out. They might have paid near $1 million, but they're gonna get, half or more than half of that back. Now, if you don't follow the rules, it goes to $800 times 12 for taking out the tree. For commercial, $800 times 12, plus the $2,000, plus the $500 to whatever it is a day, $500 to $2,000 per tree.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah.
I understand. Like, I understand the rule, but the mitigation gets paid regardless. That's not the penalty. The penalty is on top of the
Yeah,
mitigation.
the penalty is on
so
top,
I have
yeah.
a tree that's 20 inches, for say, in my yard that keeps dropping acorns on my car and kills my front yard, and I want to have a lawn and I don't want a tree. I'm having to pay with the $400. I'm having to pay $4,000 or $5,000 to take a tree out. But when the Parks Board is recommending $250, I don't want to make a homeowner pay $4,000, $5,000 to take a tree out of their own property. When the Parks Board's saying that, hey, they should only pay $2,500 or whatever.
I felt like $250 was not enough of a penalty.
Can you please speak into the mic?
But you guys got to remember, this is per caliper inch. So if it's a 15-inch tree, it's $250 times 15, which is a multi-thousand-dollar penalty that's going to affect
That's
somebody.
correct, but I'm assuming, Jordan, that you wouldn't want somebody that has a big, huge, fat, giant pecan tree in their yard to go decide they just want to cut it down because they don't like it anymore.
I mean, of course, yeah, that sounds bad, but at the end of the day, that's their private property. If it's a single person, if we're talking a whole grove of pecan trees, no. But if it's and also too, who in the right mind would do that?
Well, it's just a living, breathing thing. I mean, I'm sorry, I know it sounds like I'm a tree hugger, as they call us, but plants, trees, all of that help us breathe. We don't cut down trees unless they're nuisance trees, which we have a list for.
Yeah, and I'm not in disagreement with having a fee. I'm just saying, I think 400 is steep.
To me, six of one, half a dozen of another. It doesn't matter.
That's steep. That's expensive.
I proposed 600 last week.
That's real steep when our own Parks Board is only recommending 250.
Jordan, is your suggestion then, the way I understand it, that we just amend this slightly so that it's only $250 for homeowners?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like she said, for homeowners, yeah, I don't think they should be punished $400 per caliper inch when the recommendation's $250. I'm okay with that. And then if the concern is developers, then have at it. I'm more concerned at the single individual person that wants to practice private property rights.
Commissioner
In a
Alcorn.
question for the entire community or subdivision, how many times in a given year does somebody actually cut down a tree they didn't like and it affects their neighbor? How often does that happen?
We got to pull the tree permit data. Do we have a tree permit?
I mean, is it somebody that just says, my neighbor cut down a tree? Is this something that we get these phone calls every week, every month, every year? Or is it just?
Well, I will tell you, in my 23 years of doing this, I've had 2 people tie themselves to a tree. One of them was a fig tree. It takes all types. Staff is not opposed to the $250 for residential, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be okay with that. I'm not trying to say.
What do we have right now? What's the fee right now?
Yeah, I'm prepared.
It's at 150 currently.
150.
Jordan, if you feel good about the 250, it being reduced to 250 for residential homeowners, I certainly would support that and would second your motion.
Yeah, that's.
All
I'm
right,
just
well,
looking
we're
out
not
for
at
you guys.
we're not at that point yet. We still have to
Okay.
have a public hearing.
Okay.
All right. So, if we're done with the discussion, I'm going to open up a public hearing. You got to sign in to speak, so if you already signed up, then I have it. They brought it to me. So yes, I do have yours. I remember your name. All right, so I'm going to open up the public hearing for agenda item 11A. And we have Ray Matthews that would like to speak.
Push it, does that work? Yes, I totally get your opinion that you want to keep costs down for building new houses and new permits and stuff like that. And it does suck when you have to pay down a tree, but I totally 100% am all for the trees in this point. My parents' property has like hundreds of trees on that thing. And I can imagine if anybody tried to build anything over there, this thing would bankrupt them and they would say no to that. But to me, I like that the way it is. Personally, my parents are there to protect the trees. They're keeping that space to themselves so that way there is like a forest there because that's an ecosystem for creatures. So we're not the only creatures on this planet, you know? And trees are important, so if I go the other way. You want to raise it to $1,000, go raise it to $1,000 per caliper inch. I don't care. We got to protect the trees, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Matthews. We have also who would like to speak, Mr. Joe Miller. Please give us your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
My name is Joe Miller, and I live at 2005 Pecan. I agree with you. The little man shouldn't have to pay the price. But right there on the corner of Pecan and Chestnut, they took down some trees that have been there for several hundred years. And, you know, that's just not right. Those trees, they were all pecan trees too. They weren't just hackberry. And I'm not a tree hugger. I've got I bought the property behind me. I bought the lot behind me. It had 2 big pecan trees on it. They were going to cut them down. The man was going to cut them down and move a house in there. I bought the property just to keep those 2 trees. I paid $9,000 for the lot. And just to keep those 2 trees. You know, I understand what you're saying, though. A person who has a tree, like you say, in their yard that's causing trouble, and they want to cut it down, they should be able to cut it down, and they shouldn't have to pay an exorbitant price. But still, you've got the other side of the coin. You got people out there that just went in there and cut those trees down because he wants to build a duplex there.
Yep.
I mean, how fair is that?
So I guess my question would be if there were, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. All right.
Mr. Miller, thank you, sir. All right, up next, we have Susan Castillo. Susanna, okay. Thank you.
Even though you are a citizen. My name is Susana Castillo. I live in 2204 Hill Street, Bastrop, Texas. My question is, if I have a tree that has grown close to my fence and is pulling up my fence, do I have to pay to get rid of that tree?
So, no, so the city arborist, so there's a couple of exceptions, and so Commissioner Scott, I need to help you understand. The arborist is gonna come if it's causing damage to plumbing, if it's causing, I mean, there's exceptions, we're gonna work with you. What we're talking about, yes, there's a mitigation fee that we're talking about, but it's not intended to apply to residents who aren't trying to do anything. The tree might be in the way, it's causing you damage to the foundation, the fence, those kinds of things. We're gonna work with you on that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts that you're gonna pay anything. I think Mr. Scott's issue is you just don't like the tree and it's gonna come out. And so there's a difference there. If you have a problem with the tree, we're gonna work with you.
Okay, I have another question. What if I have a tree that keeps breaking, when the weather comes and it moves everything and it breaks, the branches fall off, it breaks the branches. And it's constantly like almost hitting the house or whatever. Or, you know, getting about a few inches away from the windows. What about that tree?
I would say we would take that on a case-by-case basis. We're gonna send the arborist out. Your branches are falling for a reason. Probably the tree's not really healthy. Most trees are gonna be able to take some of that.
Right, but what if it's, you know,
Yeah.
the trees on my land are old. So as they get older, they
Yeah.
can't withstand the weather.
Yeah. We're gonna work with you. Again, that's what we have a staff person.
Okay, but is there going to be like a charge because the tree is there and it's could cause damage? I still have to pay $200 or $500 or whatever to get it.
So
I'm going to have to pay the city and I'm going to have to pay somebody to cut it down.
Yeah, I understand. So my hope is that no, but I would really recommend that the commission tonight say that, to give staff an ability to have a variance process. Yeah, okay. Commissioner, the
Okay,
chair's already on that. Okay, okay, yes. And so if they give me administrative authority in the code, then yes, we're gonna work with you and not charge anything.
But I would hope not, because, I mean, the tree is causing a problem, which as an older person, I'm only living on Social Security, and I don't have money to be paying for the tree that's causing the damage.
Understand.
And somebody to come and cut it down.
Understand. That's not the goal. The goal is not for this to be completely punitive. The goal is not for this to prevent homeowners from working on their trees, not at all. That's not what this is intended to be.
Okay, just so the language is in there right and not, can be interpreted two ways. Okay? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Castillo.
And it's being recorded on the record, so somebody will come back and say, Sylvia said at this point in the meeting.
All right, we don't have any more citizen comments on that. I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioner Parsons, looks like you have something to say.
No, I'd like to make a motion.
What?
I know. You have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Commissioner
ask
Scott?
her,
Yes, sir.
what language would we put into a motion to differentiate, or like, how would you
I'm going
recommend
to give it
us
a try.
differentiating between homeowners and commercial property?
Let's see what
Let me
Commissioner
see if I
Parsons
can, let me see
has.
if I can nail it.
Got it.
Okay. The commission would like to increase the fee for removing protected trees from $250 to $400 per caliper inch, reducing the minimum size for protected trees from 13 inches to 10 inches, implementing a $1,000 per day fine for violations with debate on whether this applies per tree or overall, and considering criminal penalties for severe violations. We would like to give administrative authority to the staff for variances for residential homeowners.
With the fee of?
I don't know, for a fee of $250, or for a fee of
That
zero, or
work
for
for you,
his-
Commissioner
for a-
Scott? All right.
Does that work for you,
I
Scott? If
second.
not, fix it.
Okay, he seconds it, so it sounds like it works for him. We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris,
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Gary Moss,
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that one passes unanimous. Thank you. All right. We are finally going to go back to the beginning of the meeting, and we are going to move on to agenda item 3A. It'll be real quick. Okay. We're going to wait for Commissioner Toth to come in. No. Okay. All right. So, agenda item 3A, consider an act to approve meeting minutes from the January 30th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and review and consider new draft meeting minute format for future consideration.
Has
Everyone had an opportunity to look at that? Check it out?
I've got a motion for you.
Okay. Have a motion.
To
Alondra, do you have
consider
something you want to
it-
present? No, you're good? Okay.
I've read the minutes, looked at the minutes, and considered approving the minutes as written as of January 30th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second.
Second.
Did you catch the second?
Yes, it was Commissioner Estes.
Yes.
Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. Passes unanimous. All right, so we're on to agenda item 4, plats. We have 4A, consider and act to approve the Colony Mud 1D, Section 2A, final plat being 14.996 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bang Survey, abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
Again, good afternoon, Commissioner members and public. I'm going to give a more detailed overview on this one, and the next 3 items will be basically the same scenario, but I'll go over this one first. This is the Colony, which is a subdivision outside the city. It's been part of our ETJ. We're going through the platting process. This is the final plat for 20 residential lots depicted here. There's 3 non-residential lots. What I mean by that, the larger lot to the north is going to be an amenity center, and the other 2 non-residential lots are for drainage. Traffic analysis was done back as part of the overall master development. Utilities are serviced through a MUD, which is a municipal utility district. So again, as part of the master concept and master design, the MUD will take care of the water and sewer as far as utilities goes. Drainage has also been reviewed and approved. The preliminary plat, which is a preliminary look at first, this is the final plat of this section. The preliminary plat was approved by the Zoning Commission back on July 30th of 2024. The final drainage plan was approved by City Engineer on July 11th, 2024. And the public improvement plans were approved by the City Engineer on September 25th, 2024. And the Development City staff has reviewed this plat, and we're recommending approval. Any questions?
Commissioners, you have anything?
I had a quick question. Are they within the city limits now?
No, they're into ETJ, and part of the MUD will.
When is there a timeline as to when they're coming in, or?
At the point that the MUD debt is paid, we have a development agreement, a long-term annexation plan.
That include all the colony around it that's being developed?
Pretty much all of the colony, yes.
It seems like they keep adding a subdivision every 6 months.
And they keep adding a new section to their MUD, their municipal utility district.
Is there any guessing how long this is all going to take?
Some of the colony portions are within probably 10 years already.
So this isn't going to happen next week?
No.
Okay.
We have anything? Anyone else? All right. I think we need to wait on Commissioner Toth to come in so we can. There's no public hearing on this. No, these are just the plats. We have 2 more coming on the agenda item, but I wanted to get the bigger items taken care of so we can get everyone home. We're going to go through all of 4.
You ready for a motion?
I got it. We got it. We need Commissioner Toth here.
I can talk real slow.
There he goes. Huh?
By the time he gets back here.
Right on time like the light bill.
You got it.
All right.
Ready now?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'd like to put a motion forward to approve and send forward to the City Council the Colony MUD 1D Section 2A final plat being 14.996 acres out of the Jose Manuel Banks Survey. I got to get my glasses, sorry. Abstract numbered 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive within the extraterritorial justice of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
I second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Landry?
Yes. Christopher Toth.
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimous. On to agenda item 4B, consider an act to approve the Colony MUD 1D Section 2B final plat being 96.173 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bang Survey, abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
Again, same scenario, just a general overview. This section is a little bit bigger. As described, it's 173 acres. In this particular area, it's going to be 262 residential lots, and again, 5 non-residential for drainage, et cetera. Again, traffic analysis was done over the master development. Utilities are again serviced through the MUD Municipal Utility District. Drainage has been approved. The history, again, this is a final plat. The preliminary plat was approved by P&Z on August 29th, 2024. Final drainage plan was approved by engineering on August 29th, 2024. And the public improvement plans were approved by the city engineer on 30/24. And again, we took us through our development review committee and review process, and staff recommends approval.
So Commissioners, I want to just point out something as we talked about minimum lot sizes. This is a perfect example. That larger piece of the lot way at the bottom, that's a quarter-acre lot. It's a little bit over 10,000 square feet in relation to the rest of those lots. That's what we were trying to prevent in historic Bastrop.
Which one at the bottom? The one that looks like number 14?
Down at the very, yes, I
Yeah,
believe
or
it's
whatever. No, what is it?
12, I
15,
believe.
12?
Yeah,
So
14,
that one there?
15.
Okay, so that's a quarter-acre size lot?
That's a quarter acre. It's a little bit more than 10,000 square feet, when the rest of those lots are about an eighth, a little bit more than. So when we think about subdivision, and we think about no minimum lot sizes, and we think about what could happen in historic Bastrop, this is a perfect example. I don't have any control in the ETJ other than what we can do with drainage, et cetera, but this is happening everywhere around us.
All right, so it looks like some of those lots are similar in size, but you have some that are smaller, right? But generally, those in the cul-de-sacs, they are generally, the corner lots are larger, right?
And you
So-
said that cul-de-sac lot, that's a quarter acre?
That is approximately quarter acre. It's about 10,000 square feet. Get your calculators out.
You might be able to see it on the monitor, the laptop itself.
Based on other sections, I can pull it up too, but most of them are actually 0.14 on like the smaller rectangle ones. And the
So, if a quarter acre is 0.25, and half of that is, 1.25.
Eighth of an acre.
It's not much more than an eighth.
Okay.
And like she said, the cul-de-sac ones are closer to the 0.25.
And those, that HOA subdivision is going to have protections, not allowing additional dwelling units and the things that we don't have quote-unquote HOAs for.
I have a question. Who approves these developments when they come in with such small lots?
So you're approving it now.
Oh, good. No, I'm talking about when they initially, way in
Staff.
the very beginning.
Staff. So we go through a process with the engineers. They have to submit preliminary engineering. The thing about a plat is it's a ministerial process, right? So long as it checks the boxes, we have to approve it. We just came off of a no minimum lot size discussion. As long as they can drain it, as long as they can provide a traffic impact that meets, then, there's not a whole lot.
They can squeeze them all they want.
I have a question, Sylvia. What size are the streets? Are they about the same as Pecan Park? Do you know?
Alondra, can you? She's got a better version of the plat than we do here.
Because this is the streets that really are a lot of the problem.
Correct.
in
It's
my
the streets
opinion.
and the setback. So we need wider streets and
The
we
streets is
need.
as big as the lots.
And we need a setback. So
Lengthwise.
we are rapidly working on street widths, et cetera, et cetera. You'll see it in your next meeting or so. But yes, between the street width and the setback, that's the only way you prevent that spillage out onto the sidewalk and getting people to go around. And the B3 code had a decent protection in trying to require parking in the second layer, right, behind. Decent protection, but then when you couple that with no parking required, and you can fit as many lots as you can on an acre under the existing conditions, it's no wonder that things just shrunk and shrunk and shrunk.
Affordable housing.
Yeah. I know. I cannot tell you the number of emails that I have gotten and the number of comments and things about Sylvia's killing affordable housing. Well, again, I want to be very clear. No, I'm not. It's how do you define affordable, and then who's stuck paying the bill? Do I pass it on to the existing residents? And we've been saying since the time I got here, y'all were saying it already, that development should pay for itself. Well, is it when we do that? When we do that in historic Bastrop, is it paying for himself? Is it paying for itself? Who am I passing that on to?
So this is in the ETJ with the minimum lot size that we are talking about tonight that's going to go to the city council. When someone comes to you after, let's say, April 1st, somebody comes to you from the colony and asks for a plat to be finalized like we're doing right now, and all these lots are too small for city limits, since it's in the ETJ, it's not going to matter, right?
We do have plating authority in the ETJ as well, especially when they're going to be receiving some sort of negotiated service from us. The likelihood is that they will come through a planned development district. They'll come through a PDD, at which time the commission is able to say, all right, maybe we're going to allow that, but you need to give this, this, and this. The streets need to be wider. Your setbacks need to accommodate blank. You need to have, and you guys approved 1 parking space per bedroom a couple of meetings back. So there's a lot of conversation that's going to be had in the future of these coming through.
Sylvia, I had a question. We spoke on another occasion, and I seem to remember something about that the colony developments at some point will be incorporated into Bastrop City.
Correct.
Could you please explain again how that is going to happen?
Sure. So several of the colony sections, not the super old, at the very first entrance of the colony by Compass Rose, not that section of the colony, but everything on the other, pretty much the other side of Sam Houston, is under a development agreement. And so the colony is created under what we call a MUD, a municipal utility district. The city is prevented from annexing that until the MUD debt is paid. Now, there are certain exceptions to that. There are in-city MUDs that can happen, and a MUD is simply a financing vehicle by which the developer pays for water, sewer, drainage, pays for their utility and road infrastructure, essentially. We are looking at a MUD that wants to come in off of 304. We are saying, fine, do a MUD, but you have to come into the city limits. And if we're providing you wastewater and we're providing you certain services, then you should be included like the rest of the residents and pay the property taxes. There's no reason you get to escape them. So.
Do they maintain their own streets?
The colony does. There are some subdivisions here who do not. For example, Riverside Grove, the city maintains. Hunter's Crossing has a public improvement district, but somehow the city got stuck maintaining those streets. Piney Creek Bend, the city maintains those streets as well.
All right. Do we have anything else? Would someone like to make a motion?
Here we go. I want to, excuse me. I want to make a motion to recommend to the city council that the Colony MUD 1D, Section 2B, final plat, bearing 96.173 acres out of the Josie Manuel Baines Survey, abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive, within the justification of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A. Exhibit A. Take a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Alondra?
Yes, Christopher Toth.
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yep.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, passes unanimous. Agenda item 4C, consider an act to approve the Colony MUD 1F Section 4 preliminary plat being 107.351 acres out of the Jose, is it Josie or Jose? I want to say it correctly. Jose, all right. Jose Manuel Bank Survey, abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, is shown in Exhibit A.
So again, same scenario, only difference in this one, this is a preliminary plat, not a final plat. This is the area being proposed, which a preliminary plat's giving you the concept of the layout. They'll have to come back and meet with staff on engineering, design, et cetera, as noted in the previous reports. It's gonna be, they're proposing 89 residential lots, and again, 2 non-residential lots, again, being part of a MUD, but again, this is only preliminary. They'll have to go through the design process and reviewed by staff and be brought back to you as a final plat. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Since we've passed this minimum lot size tonight, where does this fall within the rules? Do they have to- do they
It's
have to-
vested.
Pardon?
It's grandfathered, it's vested, it was happening through the process. So I want to make sure that the commission understands a preliminary and a final plat. A preliminary is a snapshot in time of what they're intending to do, and a final, they can come back and only final 4 lots or so. And that's important because as a city, we require public improvement agreements, PIPAs, public improvement, right? We require an agreement that they're going to put in said sewer, said water, said roads, said drainage. And we also require a bond to be put up so that if they don't finish it, our residents aren't on the hook. That's developer money. We call the bond. There are some developers who don't have the money for the full bond. Those developers should scare you. And so as a staff, we make sure that the financial wherewithal is there to finish what they start.
So it's so small I can't read it. So does that say on Tavish Trail, 50-foot street? 50-foot right-of-way?
Yeah, that's the right of way, but the street width, did you find a street width?
Yes, so the street width is actually 28-foot roads on their, like their internal roads. And then they have the Republic Drive and other roads that lead into the subdivision or wider right-of-way, which would come with wider streets as well.
And they're wide enough with cars parked there to get emergency vehicles through?
So this is going to be Emergency Services District that would have reviewed this plat and agreed to its passage.
Yeah, I would say whoever makes the motion, they need to put that in there. And are all these lots .18? The small lots, .18?
These lots appear to actually be larger than that.
Yeah, I just can't read it.
Yeah, can you read it in your packet? No? Is it-
No, that's what
See,
he's
it's
looking at it, he
so-
can't read it.
So
gosh.
tiny.
Is there a way we can zoom in on it?
No, this is
Alondra, can you zoom in on your end and let us know?
yeah,
So
being-
50-foot right-of-way is behind the sidewalk. It includes sidewalk, the green space, the curb, and the street. That's why it's 50 feet. You don't get 50 foot of street off of that. You get a 28-foot street.
I guess I don't know how wide a street should be.
Well, I'll tell you that
From
in
curb to
our
curb.
in our current code, some of them are 22 and 24
That would be
feet.
my worry, is to make
Yes.
sure that we can get an ambulance down the street.
So, previous experience for fire, so this is a minimum street width for fire access is 28 feet. So the next one would you'd like to see 30, but 28 is the next
standard.
allowed standard. Anything below that is generally when you start getting into when fire lanes are required, additional, like the fire hydrant. There's some caveats that come into play when you go
So
less
does
than 28.
28 feet count for a car parked on either side of the street?
So you got a 9-foot, right, state law says you can park a foot off curb, so give a.
I mean, it's not one of those
So you got
mammoth
10, so you got
trucks then.
10 foot on one side, 10 foot on the other side, and that leaves a 8
feet.
foot between each travel lane, or between each car parked, right? So
Yeah,
it's a little tight.
Yeah, you gotta.
Oh, 18 feet, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you gotta, okay.
Sorry,
So-
my bad. Yeah, you gotta squeeze.
Wait.
18 feet in between. So it's plenty of space. When you start getting below that is when you really start getting into tight.
Right. Okay.
So, for example, Piney Creek is
Right, I was just
20
about to say that.
Piney Creek is 24 foot.
Which
It
is
is
why,
thin, it's narrow over there.
exactly, which is why they don't allow parking on
Oh,
both
on-
sides.
it's only on one side of the street
Now,
in Pecan Park.
You try to be the police officer who enforces that.
And then what happens in that neighborhood is if you go over there, you'll see people who stay 4 or 5 houses down. They have to park way over here because, you know, maybe there's not room in the driveway, and, right? Well,
Commissioner Parsons, you were talking about the grid streets earlier. The grid street that was just removed has a lot of those 24-foot streets, a whole grid of them. And no, there is no such thing as a European fire truck that the city has planned to purchase. Seriously, there's documents in development agreements here that says the city's going to purchase a European fire truck that was narrower as an excuse to make the roads smaller.
On this plat, some of the lots are as small as 6,000 square feet, so it would be about 0.14 of an acre, sorry.
Yeah, they're tiny. I could tell they were tiny.
6,000 square feet is about what you find in Riverside Grove.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yes, sir.
Are these cul-de-sacs, will they allow for a light flight to land in them?
No.
No, they'll, probably not.
Generally not because of overhead obstructions, i.e. there's requirements for like street poles, street lights, right? So they usually don't land, they usually prefer to land outside somewhere else. But that cul-de-sac will have to be, so the fire code dictates your cul-de-sacs, dictates how far you can go, like without having a cul-de-sac. It's 150 feet non-sprinklered, 200 feet sprinklered. Street widths, it dictates all of those. So the fire code kind of drives a lot of our street widths. Now what happens is fire code does allow you to go less, but if you go less, you have to have fire lanes. You have to have, so there's other things developers try to like get the lowest possible, so more bang for their buck. And you'll see some people do like lay down curves, where you have curbs, and that way it adds to your fire lanes. And there's a ton of ways to make it work, but as long as we stay within when we went back, rolling back to the 2017, that makes fire happy, I promise.
All right,
So
thank you.
what is the city's suggestion to us? Is that what's on here?
Yeah.
Consider
Yes.
and act on what's here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
this meets.
I can't
this-
say anything to that.
This meets.
Okay. Anyone?
You
Okay.
ready?
Make a motion to consider
There you go.
and act to approve the Colony Mud 1F Section 4 preliminary plat being 31.564 acres out of the Jose Manuel Banks Survey,
That's Josie.
abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive within the ETJ of Bastrop as shown in Exhibit A.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Alondra?
Yes, Christopher Toth,
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, passes unanimous. Item 4D, consider an act to approve the Colony Mud 1F Section 5 preliminary plat being 113 acres out of the Jose Manuel Banks Survey, abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
Again, thanks, Commission members. Again, this key word is preliminary plat, allows them to go forward with their design. As noted, it's going to be 106 proposed 106 residential lots and 4 non-residential lots, as again depicted here. So exact same scenario as the previous case. Preliminary, allow them to go forward with their design. Any questions?
All right, do we have any new questions, commissioners?
I got one question. With all these that we've seen, these sections being developed, is there a timeline as to when they'll be occupied, dwellings occupied, occupation, or?
So preliminary plat is good for 2 years, and then they have to final plat it, and like I said, as a part of the final plat, they have to put up bond or other fiscal security, so,
If they go through all the processing, and everything is good, when would they have occupancy in these homes?
oh my goodness, homes are going up. Valverde is putting up 15 homes a week or so.
I'm just thinking about the impact on the community, fire, water,
Yes.
sewer, schools. I mean, are the schools aware of all this?
Yes, we meet very regularly with the school now to help their demographer plan the schools and any land acquisition that's necessary. The
Great.
colony actually has a Colony Oaks that was built recently in it
What
through,
grades do they cover?
it's an elementary school.
So it's 1 through 8.
Yeah, we, like all of the,
Drive.
a lot of the schools are going through upgrades and expansions and improvements to
Well, I know you see
accommodate
the
for this.
construction around town. I'm just wondering if this is part of the consideration.
Yes. Yes, I was on the task force for that a couple of years back, and they
Good.
planned that out for the
They
growth.
know.
Yes. Thank you. All right, commissioners, we have anything else? Yes, we got to wait for Commissioner Moss. He's always rushing everybody. Yeah, that's right. Are you going to vote?
Go on, Gary. What did you vote?
All right. We are moving along pretty well. We have a few more items to go.
Sylvia, I have a question while we're just sitting here. What other items with the code, that would be considered a little testy, that we're going to be needing to look at for a while?
So we're touching the code itself, but we still have to look at the technical manual, and that's where street construction, how much base is required, street width, drainage. We're going to get into the super meat and potatoes of it. This, believe it or not, this is at the topical level. I know.
Just shoot me now.
I know. I'm sorry. But let me tell you why it's important. If we don't do those things properly, for example, Blakey being listed as a collector, it should have a no heavy truck sign on it. It's been moved to a major thoroughfare now, but the trucks that are driving through it, the big giant trucks who avoid 969 intersection and go across there, are ripping that street to heck.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm talking about those kinds of things. I think I'm talking about gridded streets, lot sizes. What are those kind of major topical, major topics have we yet to discuss that could end up being a little bit of causing some friction?
Overlay districts, as we either proceed or not proceed through a certified local government process. We've got some uses still to talk about in downtown Bastrop specifically. And that gets a little mucky because we're not under a use-based code, we're under form. So there's about probably 12 or 15 more items.
Is place or form-based code going to be coming up for discussion?
I think what everybody has understood is form has a place in town, and that's where it was before, which is in the downtown region. What we try to do is extend it to the entire town, and it doesn't work in especially residential areas. And if you're trying to keep commercial corridors flexible, it doesn't work there either.
So that one's yet to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to consider an act to approve the Colony Mud 1F Section 5 preliminary plat being 29.413 acres out of the Jose Manuel Banks Survey, abstract number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive, within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Alondra?
Christopher Toth.
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Keith
Yes.
Osborne. Gary Moss.
Yep.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Doc. We appreciate everything, sir. All right, we're on to agenda item 6A, hold a public hearing, consider an act to amend the Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, by enacting Article 10.01 titled Parkland Dedication and Park Enrichment Fund, Sections 10.01.001 through 10.01.014, and move to include on the March 4th, 2025 Special City Council agenda for the first reading. Ms. Viviana.
Good evening. That slide did not format correctly, so my apologies first off. So there's that. So I'm before you tonight, and it's just a recap of what we talked about last time, which is essentially we are looking to revise Chapter 10 in the Code of Ordinances to adopt a parkland and community enrichment fee portion in Chapter 10. This will replace the allocation of parkland that we currently obtain through Civic Space, because Civic Space has such a wide variety that does not guarantee that we're always getting meaningful parkland. In addition to that, the revision to this chapter, or better yet, enacting these articles and sections within Chapter 10 do meet the parklands or the Parks Master Plan goals of 1, 2, and 5, those being securing a better methodology for funding, securing a better methodology for park improvements, and land acquisition. So that will meet that intent for the Parks Master Plan that was recently done. In addition to this, the land dedication is implementing meaningful code changes, in my opinion, that will ensure that if you see this image at the top, that's the Piney Creek subdivision. The parkland that they allocated as a part of that subdivision can only be accessed by these where the two yellow circles are, these very small stretches of street, and there's supposed to eventually be some kind of trail back there, but it's not very welcoming to the public or discernible to that matter. We are going to be looking in this, with the adoption of this code, to secure parkland that's a little bit more akin to what you would see in Riverside Grove via Bob Bryant, where there's an actual stretch of street that kind of welcomes you into that parkland. It's more noticeable. It's more just present to the community, so the community realizes that it's an access, or there's access to resources that they can enjoy. Another thing that will be changing is only 20% of this property can be dedicated or located in the floodway or 100-year floodplain. Piney Creek Bend, another reason why we can't really develop this property is because most of it is in the flood. There's a portion of it that's in the floodway. That's the it's the Piney Creek watershed, and that eventually feeds out to the Colorado River. So we want to make sure that we have parkland that's out of the floodway for sure, because you can't develop that per FEMA's regulations, and as much as possible, not all in the 100-year floodplain, so that we can put vertical improvements and things of that nature and really enjoy our parks. In addition to that, I did make one minor change as a recommendation that was given by one of the citizens that stated that they felt that it would be better to title this development area instead of development quadrant. So I did revise it to say development area 1 and 2. Essentially, these will be the areas where we can reallocate the funds that we gather whenever someone does a fee in lieu of dedication. So when developers are developing, they can either A, dedicate parkland, or B, do a fee in lieu of dedication. The larger the quadrant area, the more you have an opportunity to reinvest. So it's important that we kind of keep it as large as possible, especially because a majority of the development is happening to the west of the city, and this would allow the further development happening in the west to integrate fees to the east side, where some of our parks are currently located, and they could receive some of the benefit of redevelopment. And then finally, what we're doing that's new to Bastrop is the park enrichment fee. And Mr. Moss, I have some fun facts for you, but essentially we are recommending that this will be $250 per dwelling unit. I did look up some other cities, because I know that you had a concern where you said, hey, is this cost prohibitive? Is this going to make it difficult to development? And essentially the City of Buda, their fee that they have adopted, that they recently revised this past fiscal year, is $1,500 a unit. So I think this $250 is like very reasonable. In addition to that, the City of Pflugerville actually has a range of $496 to $745 a unit. So once again, I think we're well within range. I also went ahead and reached out to Ms. Terry Moore, and I just asked for a quick snippet of some park improvements that need to be done so that we can understand the financial burden that we have, or the financial implication that we have for maintaining some of our parks. So as you can see, these are the different parks that we have. It's an itemized list of different things that need to occur. And so some of these improvements, if, for instance, in Fisherman's Park, are over $1 million. Well, this park enrichment fee will allow us to offset some of those costs. And so it's extremely exciting to me to understand that we could see development help pay for the impact it will already have to the parks that they're going to get to enjoy.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Mayfest Park.
It's, it was a very long list. I didn't include all of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I ran out of room. I didn't want to
Okay.
make it too wordy.
All right.
I was like, oh, we'll do the top 3. But all of them, she even has, she has Mayfest Park. Well, she has every park. It's a very long list, honestly.
We have Fireman's Park on the south end down there.
Hmm. Yes. And so, I mean, even more so, Commissioner Harris, to drive home the point that we need funds, because that isn't even all of it. Okay. So essentially, I am recommending that you all make a recommendation to adopt the Parkland Dedication and Park Enrichment Fund ordinance as proposed by staff, and I am open for any questions.
Why shouldn't we go up?
Well,
let's start here and then we can revisit, correct?
and this is true. We can always revisit. We can always increase. It is not off the table, and yeah.
But what are you thinking?
I'd say $400 or $500. If it's $1,500, you said Buda?
Well,
Those clowns down there can get $1,500.
Well, I mean,
That
you
flat
know,
land, we can get
to go back to Commissioner Scott earlier with really going across the citizens' pocketbooks.
Well, but these are new developers coming in.
I mean, but it's. Right.
Mr. Estes is not incorrect.
Right.
You are correct.
Say that again, I didn't hear it.
It gets, so anytime you levy any kind of impact fee, additional fee to developers, they just make it a wash.
They pass it on to the
buyer.
citizens themselves.
The people that are actually going to use the park.
Well, they're making an improvement to the city.
Right, and that is what we want.
Which is what we want,
But
which-
we also need to make sure that we don't have this where they want to get
Process
too
out
much.
of the market, but
I understand that. My feeling is that they're coming anyway. They're coming anyway.
Okay, so what are we
And
thinking?
I'm thinking that why not make this the best place we can make it if they're coming anyway? And if, other cities around us are doing $1,000, we're only doing $250, to me, it makes it kind of seem kind of
Does
silly.
$250 cover it right now? Will $250 cover
we're
it?
not getting anything now.
That's what we need to
So-
know.
so,
Well,
right.
that's what we're asking.
Yeah.
If now we do $250, will that cover it?
It will help. It will
But-
help.
So
no.
everybody get your
So
calculators out.
that's a no.
Everybody
That's
get
a
your
no.
calculators out.
I mean, let's just
Because it
ask,
sounds like we'll have to revisit this again.
how many units are we getting in a year on
No,
average?
So that's what I'm saying. Everybody get your calculators
At this
out.
number, at
Because
this number here,
how
we
know
might
how
have
much
to
we're
revisit
getting.
it again.
I mean, you see,
Calculators are out.
So here's the first comment. Number one, the parks are use and enjoyment for everybody, right? And it's the same thing with the roads. It's the same thing. So $250 divided by 360 is how much?
0.699.
Yeah, that's 69 cents
69
that you'll
cents a
add,
day.
quote unquote. That's 69 cents per month. There's 360 months in a 30-year mortgage.
Okay, I thought it was talking
69
about the
cents
year.
per month that you would add to somebody's mortgage. And I'm going to give you compound interest, so I'm going to say $1 a month that you would add. Now, I'm not going to disguise it that it's this fee and this fee and this fee and this fee. And at some point, we get to a point where things are very expensive. To the point of they're coming anyway. Commissioner Parsons, are you for or against affordable housing? Because when it comes to ADUs,
No, I'm for affordable housing. I'm for all of that. I just feel like when you look at the cities that people really love and really would like to go to, they've got trees, they've got parks, they've got, they're attractive communities that provide really nice amenities for their residents. And if this is one way we can improve our parks in the city, I think we should look at, maybe it's not 500, maybe it's 350. I just think that 250 is low.
So, and this is, we have the same fee for apartments, correct? Okay, so right now, Valverde, let's just, 2,000 units, plus 680 at Reed Ranch, plus the 4 rent community that'll come in the Pecan Park area, and let's just say 1,000 there, plus 1,300 at 1304 in
Ironwood.
Shiloh.
Yes, ma'am.
That's how many? 4980 times 250.
Oh, that's 328,680.
4980 times 250, 4,980
It's
times.
almost, yeah, 1.245 million.
So 1.245 million, and she had Fisherman's Park by itself at 1.4. So again, I'm just, you know, I get slaughtered over affordable housing, y'all. Slaughtered over
Well,
affordable
send them
housing.
to us, we get slaughtered.
I'm gonna give them your personal
Give 'em
email
my
address.
number.
But there is something to be said about a quality of life. Now, and I'm gonna tell you, we lived in Kyle, and we would go to the Buda splash pad with the grandkids. That 1.4 million that she's got up there for Fisherman's Park, that's simply to get the splash pad done correctly. Because it's not recirculating the water, y'all. Every time I run that splash pad in a month in the summer, it's wasting 1 million gallons of water. It's not recirculating. That's 1 million gallons of water that's going into the treatment plant that's taking up room for other stuff. That is just, it blows my mind. Every time we're going to turn it on, I get like heart palpitations because it's just not the right thing to do. I get it. Our kids need a place to go. But that's a repair. We're like, ugh, on it. We got to do it. So, long story, to make a point, if you go to 300, it's a place to start. It's a place to start.
Why did they pick 250? That just seemed reasonable to them at the time.
The thought about affordability.
Because this is a one-time fee for
It is
these
a one-time fee,
developers.
and it's paid at building permit.
So, commissioners, do we have any recommendations?
I just had a quick question.
Sorry.
Is there anything in these parks that you would like you don't see?
Oh, our Parks Master Plan has all of that
I was just
good
kind of
stuff.
toys
Yeah.
they want to put in there.
Yeah. Our
And
parks-
you're hemorrhaging about water recycling.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that part of the plan?
Yes.
So, yes, so the Parks Master Plan did an exhaustive study, and so it had a list of recommendations for land acquisition, for fund acquisition, and then for improvements to said parks. And some of those even include actual vertical improvements that you would install in the park.
Playgrounds.
So-
Viv uses the fancy word vertical improvements. Swing sets, playgrounds, play
Talking
sets.
layman's terms. More
So
swing
Commissioner Scott, the thing that you may have missed last week also is that if the developer says, if Ms. Moore says, hey, I've got a swing set up there that I want to, the playscape at Bob Bryant that's $70,000, and that developer says, I can get it for 30 and we'll put it up, then great, check box. We're going to call it even. If they can do it faster, better, cheaper, it's normally not all three, but if they can do it better than we can and we get a playscape up, that meets the intent of the fee also. Very similar to the road impact fee. We have a road impact fee, but if they can build it, great, then we're even.
All right, do we have anything else? Oh, Commissioner Toth.
I'd certainly be willing to consider doubling that fee, but the question I have for the staff, city manager, are there any second, third order effects we need to consider by doing that? Obviously, it's going to raise the price of a house or of rent, not that much over time, but is there anything else we should be considering if we were to raise that to $500 or some other type fee?
It's going to be at building permit cost, so the builder's going to tell you that they have to pass that cost on to the resident, and it's going to affect affordability. That's going to be the number one argument.
It still seems rather minimal in the great scheme of things.
Agreed.
Okay.
It
All right,
is in my opinion, it is a one-time fee that you collect just that one time and one time only. So if you think about the house and the fact that a house usually exists there in perpetuity until it's either demolished or, I don't know, rebuilt or something like that. Most houses have an average lifespan of 50, 60, 70 years. That's one time that you collect that value at that one time for the access to our parks, for as long as that house exists and whoever lives there gets to access our parks. So.
We are so far behind in recreation facilities in this town. It's scary. So.
Yep, so it is.
It is.
All right,
yeah.
so I'm going to open up the public hearing for this. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, so I am going. I don't have anything from you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, can I get a copy from you, please,
Sure.
just so we can have it on official
I can do
document?
that.
Thank you.
John Kirkland, 1505 Main Street. So I have kind of a philosophical approach to taxation that has to do with the individual who's paying the tax should be paying for something that they benefit, right? And
Right.
and so this fee goes to benefit the parks generally, which then it benefits everybody, not specifically them. So this is different than development paying for itself.
Right.
And so to sort of match the philosophical bent, one consideration is that maybe you could look at the projects that are paid for and that it should be to expand, maybe you limit it to projects that would expand capacity in the parks. You know, so for instance, if you're using it to add additional playgrounds, then you're adding additional capacity. And then those people that are paying those fees are then paying for something that directly benefits them,
Right.
which is the additional capacity. But some of these things like replacing fixtures or painting the pavilion, that's shared expense for everybody. And paying for it with those dollars means you're not expanding the capacity by collecting it. So it's just a philosophical thing, and I'm looking at this, and I want to hear you talk about that, because I want to hear what you have to say.
Right. Well, it's just kind of like you have to do certain things to upkeep your house.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But
and this
everyone
is a
pays for
giant
that.
version of upkeeping everyone's house
Yeah.
because you want it to look right and
Anyway,
be taken care of.
just a thought. I was curious if you guys, I'm like, I almost want to participate in the conversation, but I can't really, but I thought, okay, well.
Is this a hippie thing? Is that
No,
what
no,
this-
it's just, no, I always look at, like for instance, when you take out municipal debt, you're taking out a 30-year mortgage to pay for something, so hopefully you're paying for something that future residents are going to benefit from.
They'll never see that.
Well, future residents will see it, and future residents are paying for it. Like if you're putting in a brand-new road, by the time that road is then put in place in a year or 2 or 3 years in the future, and then it's paid for over the course of 30 years, well, the people that are driving on that road are paying for it because they're the ones paying for the taxes that are paying off that bond. And so I always look to try to set the tax burden on the person that's benefiting from the thing that the tax is paid for. And so I'm looking at this and like, well, this one kind of goes out of whack a little bit. Because
So would you recommend we have kind of a two-tier?
not so much recommend, I'm just proposing conversation, right?
Right. Would you recommend we have a conversation about having a two-tier?
Well, I guess I look at it as could, and this would be a question both on law and policy, but could the money that is collected with this fee be set aside for things that relate to expansion? So for instance, a new slide, swing set thing, whatever those are called, vertical improvements, I think that's their technical term, that would create expansion because you would now be able to accommodate a greater number of children in that park, in that area, and then that naturally relates to this fee is used to pay for it, that is developers or new people paying for the growth and their presence here. But if it goes to paint a bathroom, just hypothetically, then that didn't really go towards the growth or the additional people that were here. That's a
Have you
maintenance
been to
expense.
Fisherman's Parks bathrooms lately?
I'm not saying the bathroom doesn't need to be painted. I'm saying that I see that as a general fund expense
I understand,
instead of.
But, this money is needed really to support what we've got and upgrade what we got. It's
So I think what Mayor Pro Tem
Yeah.
is suggesting is it not be used, very similar to the road impact fee, that it only be used for new and not for maintenance.
I mean, if you look at what it says in
And you
the
don't have to
language.
agree, I'm just.
No, Yeah, I agree. putting it out there,
Yeah,
conversation.
conversation, because it's like, my philosophy on taxation is that if you pay a tax, you should benefit from how it's spent
what about taxation
directly.
without
And I'm,
representation?
and I'm proposing a way that could
If
happen.
you read the language.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. What do you got, Commissioner Scott?
I was going to say, if you read the language, it says it's to be used for acquisition of land, development, or construction of park improvements. So I believe that with the intention of the fund, it's on the right track of what you're saying, because I
Right.
share the same philosophy as you. I hate taxes, but if the taxes are benefiting us as a whole, then yeah.
No, and I'm gonna fundamentally disagree with you both, and I'll arm wrestle you here in a minute, and I know that I'm gonna win. And let me tell you why I'm fired up. Because there is a fundamental burden on the general fund that is every single resident, regardless of. The people who are not paying that burden are those who do not live in the city limits, who have the same benefit and enjoyment of the park. It is unrealistic for me to maintain a park solely on the backs of the residents. So my option is one of two things: close off the park to non-residents, probably not a good idea, or two, raise the bottom line, which is raise taxes to be able to account in the general fund. Because in the general fund, I'm competing with fire and police and libraries and all the unsexy things that private company won't come and do. Private companies will come take our trash, they'll serve our water, they'll serve our wastewater. Those are the sexy things that make money. They won't serve a library, they won't serve all of the things that don't. And so from a philosophical who's paying for it, really, we're all paying for it, and there's no way to escape that. And to use the fee only for expansion, I'm gonna reach a point of expand where? Expand where and expand what?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the development, acquisition, or construction, we didn't leave it as to new only. We left it as also what's existing. I'll have to stand up and say there is not a city in this state who does a wonderful job of maintaining their parks for the very reasons I have just stated. They're in the general fund. New residents who come in, how many times have I heard we need a new recreation center? And that, I gotta tell you, pisses me off more than anything, because if you go look at my sign-in sheet at the rec center, 75% plus of those are non-residents. And we're contemplating going and borrowing money on the general fund against that. So it's a shared amongst everybody. I get it. It's going to be the new folks that are paying. It's also the new strain on things. And we have to do better. And this is a method to do better.
So eventually, and I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there, eventually we're going to run out of subdivisions in the city limits.
Yeah.
And that means no more one-time fee.
I do
So
want to.
right now, if you go ahead and make it more expensive now, then that problem down the road, well, it'll help now.
Yes, ma'am.
I do want to clarify. So you should be using this money to make improvements on existing parks that aren't benefiting the new development. This fee is meant to be in place of the developer providing a park for those residents, and that fee for those residents. So any money that is taken from this, it should be used to either expand facilities for new residents. I mean, you can maybe link some improvements for the increase in residents that you're getting, but this isn't meant to help your current parks and the current things that your current residents are affecting.
This is not, the fee that you're talking about is the one before this, is the
Park
fee in lieu of.
Yeah.
No. This is also for a development fee, because essentially, they're not providing you a park, and they're also not developing a park for the residents.
No, that's not true. They're still required under this fee. They're still required to submit, they're still required to dedicate a park. This is in addition to. Yeah, this is in addition to.
Oh, I thought that it says that if you develop, you don't have to pay this fee.
No, what we talked about is if the developer can put in the playscape, put in et cetera, at the same or less cost, then, it's a way to quote unquote barter.
Oh, okay.
All right. We have some clarification on that? All right. We don't have anyone else that's signed up to speak, correct? We're going to close the public hearing. Okay, so.
Okay, so you're saying that, like, if we're looking at market, right, most cities are charging plus $500 at least for the same type of fee.
The ones that I could easily
The
look
ones that
at.
we want to be competitive with, as far as like being an attractive city, being one that where we stand out and we don't get swallowed. So like essentially $500 is pretty reasonable to ask for.
That was the baseline of what I could find for communities that are charging this fee. Not every community charges this fee. Some communities do, some communities don't. 500 was the baseline of what I could find.
Yeah.
I did introduce 250 because it's a new fee and it's a new concept. And just to be honest, I didn't know how much pushback I was going to get for even bringing this forward. So there's that part too.
It can always come down, but you never can go back up.
But we also measured it against, we have a new transportation impact fee. our wastewater fee is about to go up, our sanitary sewer impact fee is about to go up by $3,000. We've got tree mitigations that we increased, and so in line with everything that's coming down the road, we've punted pretty much as far as we can. We thought 250 was at least a place to start.
Well, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
All right, I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
that we propose the following, that the staff propose the following: requiring 1 acre of parkland for every 100 proposed dwelling units in residential subdivisions, requiring 1 acre of parkland for every 200 proposed multifamily units in mixed-use or commercial developments, establishing a minimum parkland size of 1 contiguous acre, limiting the use of floodways or floodplains as parklands, creating a park enrichment fee of $500 per dwelling unit.
And just please be sure, if you're recommending approval, that you just recommend to adopt this in its
And I'm going to make
entirety.
a recommendation on amending the Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, subdivisions, by enacting Article 10.01 titled Parkland Dedication and Park Enrichment Fund, subdivisions 10.01.001-10.01.014. At a rate of $500 per residential unit.
And move to include.
Huh?
And move to include on the March 4th.
And move to include on the March 4th reading, March 4th, 2025 Special City Council agenda for the first reading.
Thank you.
All right.
Do it?
Second.
There is a motion and a second.
Christopher Toth.
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Carrie Moss.
Yep.
Jeffrey Estes.
No.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the only reason I said no is because they said 250 was enough. That's why I said no.
That was the hippies doing that.
Okay. All right. On to agenda item 9. Build to line and setbacks. Conduct a public hearing and consider an act to amend the Bastrop Code of Ordinances related to Chapter 14, the Bastrop Building Block, B3 Code, Section 6.3.008, lot occupation, establishing standards for a first layer setback in P2 and P3, Section 6.3.003, building placement by establishing standards for the first layer setback in P2 and P3, Section 6.5.003, building standards place type by establishing standards. Oh. Sorry. What? Oh. By establishing standards for the first layer setback in P2 and P3 and not Article 6.4, lot structure description and diagram by adding a clarifying statement and move to include on the March 4th, 2025 Special City Council agenda for the first reading.
So thank you, Chair. For those of you who have stuck with us, this is really the setbacks to match the built environment. So we've, under today's code, under the guise of walkability, et cetera, the setbacks are very close to the street. And this is an example of the setbacks along Jefferson, 702 Jefferson Street. And this is a house that skirted the definitions, so to speak, went through all of the appropriate meetings, went through historic landmark, and it is set less than 15 feet from the street. And so it sticks out like a sore thumb with the rest of the neighborhood. Additionally, we have, that's what the house is supposed to look like, and it's great, it's wonderful, except it's really close to the street in terms of you open your door and you're out onto the street. Very European vibe. This is a house at 602 MLK. It is less than 8 feet from the front yard when everything else around it is 25 and 30 feet. And so it is very difficult because Bastrop is so eclectic, it's very difficult for a one-size-fits-all. So what we're asking is your setback match what 2 houses down that way look like, 2 houses down this way look like, plus or minus 5 feet, so that we keep the integrity of the neighborhoods. Yes, ma'am.
When you say 2 houses on either side, what if you've got a blank I mean, you have an open lot. Would it be 2 houses past that?
We're going to, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And so the Chable says match the built environment. It is really that simple so that we don't have these different creations that cause other issues. They cause visual obstruction and.
This is the way it's been done for 100 years, isn't it?
Yes, this is the way, yes. Again, it's funny how these things come full
Yeah.
circle that we go back to.
Yeah.
Yeah. The planners in the beginning didn't have it wrong.
Yep.
All right. Do we have anything? I'm going to open up a public hearing. We have anyone want to talk? No? I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, Commissioner Scott, you have something to talk about?
I'll make a motion. They got any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? All right.
Ready?
Go ahead, commissioners. We have a jokester in it. Do you really have something? Okay. Please come forward, sir.
Is the hippie back? Oh.
We'll just count your first paper for citizen comments as
Mr.
this one, too.
Strickland.
Sir, please state your name for the record and
Yes.
3
Yes.
minutes
Name for
starts
your
now.
record and address, and you have 3 minutes.
John Kirkland, 1505 Main Street. Simple question. What if it's raw land? What is the message to developers that are trying to meet the zoning requirements for, P3, and what setbacks should they have? And if we're going to say it's supposed to be like the built environment, but there is no built environment, or is there a hole there? And that's my only question.
That is a good question. I'm going to tell you most developers from this point forward are going to try to come under some development agreement. They're going to say your rules are too strict. I can't do it under that. What this commission has said is I don't want your vehicles to stick out over the sidewalk. I don't want this, that, or the other. So we know that's at least probably a 25-foot setback.
All right.
Sylvia, it's 20 today, right?
What's that?
Is it 20 today?
No, it's actually 5 to 15.
Okay, so 20, you're saying 25?
20 to 25, yes. 20 gets you kind of right there, but there's still some overhang into the sidewalk.
Well, then why don't we just say 25, just to cover it? Not have any kind of
Okay.
conversation about it?
Sure.
All right,
Good.
well, if we don't have anyone else to speak, we're going to close the public hearing.
You can make that recommendation.
Now, if
Commissioner
you would
Parsons.
like to
I'd like
rate
to
that
make the
recommendation,
recommendation that we
then
have
can move
25
forward
feet
with that.
setback
For raw development?
for raw development.
Commissioners?
Quick question about parking again. Is 25 feet workable for multi-vehicles?
It's
20 feet won't cover 2 vehicles.
So you have to remember, we talked about 2 allowed in the garage and 2 allowed in the parking pad. So that's 4 vehicles. We said
Yeah, but
1
nobody
parking
uses their
space.
garage
Yeah, I know.
anymore.
We said 1 parking space per bedroom. So will it accommodate everything?
No.
Probably not.
Because you can drive down the subdivision, which I do usually try to pick a time when everybody's around at home, and you look at the way vehicles are parked, and they're extended over, and if you've got handicapped people trying to use the sidewalk, it's impossible. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's long enough.
25 feet?
Yeah.
Now, is that from curb to house?
You can't go to the curb because the sidewalk, you'll be over the sidewalk.
The building line back.
It's 20, well, no. So I hate to use this answer, but it depends on where you are. There are some rights-of-way that are set right at the edge of the curb, and there are some rights-of-way that are set where they're supposed to be behind the sidewalk. And so it's 25 feet from wherever your right-of-way is. It's a hole we're going to have to address, is the simple statement.
So do we need to fix that hole tonight?
You can make a recommendation, and then council, you're going to punt it to council is what you're going to end up doing if they feel 25 is not enough.
I think
So,
25 is plenty
let's
for
make a
a minimum
recommendation.
for roll-in.
So,
Commissioner Parsons? I said commissioner. Why would I say Mr.?
I don't know. I thought maybe you just like, we're tired.
No.
Yeah, I would like to make a recommendation that we make it bigger than 25. But I have to depend on you, Sylvia, to tell me what it needs to be. I mean, how do you recommend we deal with this hole, this donut hole?
So we can make a recommendation of
Yes.
what we feel and make a legit recommendation footage-wise. And then, again, once we do that, we vote on it, and then council, the burden will be on them.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so.
So yes, Commissioner Parsons, I would say the recommendation to be 25 feet, and then we will take it up. We'll do some analysis around town. What are the setbacks? Who's parked where? Not including the things that have HOA restriction.
Okay, so what does this motion look like, Sylvia? Give me some help here.
Approving the motion as submitted by staff and also adding a 25-foot setback for new development. Raw development, I'm sorry.
I'll second that.
All right, Commissioner Parsons, can we get that from you, please?
I'm going to try. To take action on, let's see here. Recommend on amending the Bastrop Code of Ordinances related to Chapter 14, the Bastrop Building Block B3 Code, Section 6.3.008 lot occupation, establishing standards for a first layer setback in P2 and P3, Section 6.3.003 building placement by establishing standards for the first layer setback in P2 and P3, and Section 6.5.003 building standards per place type by establishing standards for the first layer setback in P2 and P3 of 25 feet. Did I do it?
Is that an agreeable one for someone to do a second?
It's 25 feet? Is that what it is? The build two line?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can you please call for roll, Mr. Laundrie?
Yes, Christopher Toth.
Yes.
Ishmael Harris.
Yes.
Keith Alborn.
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yep.
Jeffrey Estes.
Yes.
Patrice Parsons.
Yes.
Jordan Scott.
Before I say yes, and this is for only raw land, correct? Because she just said 25-foot minimum setback.
Yes.
So no, this is somebody in the middle of historic Bastrop who has those acres I told you about. If they want to build, they have to match what's on.
Yeah, of
Either
course.
side, yes.
But what she was saying for the 25 foot, it's only for raw land with
Yes,
nothing around it.
Yes, nothing around it.
Okay, I vote yes.
All right, that passes unanimous. All right, y'all, we have gone through the majority of the agenda items. Now we're on to agenda item 13, updates, future development-related items. Do we have anything, Doc?
So Commissioner Parsons asked, well, no, the list isn't in here. Yes, please.
She wants to know what's going on around town, right?
Yeah. No, it's what do we have left in the B3 code to bring?
Oh.
That's it. So tonight you dealt with number 1, number 2. ADUs had a lot of conversation and had a lot of conversation at council also on how do you allow additional or how do you restrict them based on the lot size. I touched on uses in the residential districts. We still have to talk about that. That nasty word, public-private realm. And that really has to do with the landscaping and things around us and who gets to maintain that if the developer's putting in and how does that become the city's issue. We've got a lot of clarifications to come across, definitions. We're talking about water reuse credits. Remember, I want you to be able to, if we reduce the impervious cover, I want you to be able to receive credit for capturing the water off your site and reusing it, and that can be a way to barter some of that. Historic overlay district, sorry, it looks like we're missing number 9. Historic district overlay on how do we add additional protections in what was once the Iredell district. We're working to create a black cultural district overlay, which is Pine Walnut area in the Emile School. On the commercial side, we still have to address parking. The current code says parking will be market-driven. I don't know what that means, and I don't know anybody who knows what that means. I don't want you to be overparked, parking, heat, all that other stuff. Landscaping in the commercial segment. We should be requiring landscaping within every certain number of distance to control the heat and create green spaces. Uses, again, alternatives to impervious cover. Lighting, that's a big one in terms of light pollution, et cetera. Drainage credits and water reuse credits. And I said this is not an exhaustive list, but I'm tired just looking at it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
All right, do we have anything for 13B? Monthly project volume report?
Too much.
This is the list I thought we was gonna hit.
If I can get to it. Can you get me to it, Andreas? Let's see. There we go. So again, this is the report for January. Again, the general overview, as I always do, is as Sylvia touched on. If you look at new single-family residential, about halfway down. Last week of January, there was 13 single-family homes for a total of 17. Most of those are, again, D.R. Horton and Val Verde. The highlights are at the bottom. Horstman Company is a little ceramic shop over by Neighbor's Restaurant. Smoke Haven, Maven was just a name change for an existing business. Here we go again, 909 Chestnut, that's a little building across from the Shell station there on Chestnut. Carter Oshkosh, which just shows how good our economy is. This is where Rue 21 was, and they've moved out and gonna get Oshkosh in that.
That's for the kiddos.
And then Domino's Pizza is over there by the little strip center by Home Depot, the bottom one. And then on the far right, on our development stuff, we have a site plan for another hotel behind Taco Banner. There's one going up kind of behind to the left. This one's directly behind. That will be off of 304. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question, how's the grocery store coming?
I can answer that, actually. Lord have mercy. Tomorrow night, council will hear in executive session a item on the turning lane for TxDOT. Sprouts has submitted, and so we're gonna go through that process. The plan, if all goes well, is that subdivision, that commercial development be complete in the next 18 months.
Sylvia,
How far away from breaking ground, if everything goes well?
6 to 9?
Sylvia, is there anything official on the big store next to Sprouts? Because there's still things being reported by Community Impact that seem to differ from other things I've heard from the city.
The big store next to Sprouts.
So I've heard Kohl's and Dick's Sporting's good. One of
Okay,
the-
so Kohl's is not a, I can tell you there's a PetSmart, PetSmart, yes. There's a Longhorn.
Okay.
And the Sprouts, and then some smaller infill. Those are in first phase of Burleson. There's been discussion about a Dick's at the back. I have
Okay.
not seen the signed LOI, but there's also a floor and decor store.
Okay. Does Community Impact?
An LOI
yeah,
is a
we
letter
need-
of intent.
We need to talk to them then.
And I'm happy to release it once I've seen the letter of intent. But yeah, they got ahead of their skis and reported the Kohl's, and yeah.
For clarification, the Domino's on here is a second location.
So yeah, so that
Yeah.
in the same vicinity though?
No, this is 1670
Right.
East 71.
Where about is that?
It's gonna be
Other
over
side.
here on by like Bucky's. Bucky's
Ah.
is like 1700 East.
Okay,
So
okay.
somewhere probably by Popeyes. Probably by Popeyes.
I wish I
Okay.
could show you the number of, and we probably need to start tracking that, the number of phone calls, the number of early assistance that we do, the number of pre-development meetings for people that are just speculating.
All right.
They're looking to buy a piece of property and do whatever they can do on it, and mostly out of towners. And so anyway, we go through those traps and, try to only bring forward what is good quality, and we know that they can meet the rules.
Okay.
You'll see Sendero on the March 13th meeting. We got a little bit beat up because that one wasn't on here. And, again, I'll take my beating on Sylvia kept it from going on the agenda. There's some public improvements that needed bond and we didn't see the bond, we didn't see all of the documents, so I can't present it to you and in good faith tell you to approve something.
Right.
But you'll see that one come on the 13th.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, item 13C, items for individual consideration. For any commissioners? No? Okay, all right, before we move to item 14, I have an announcement to make. Tonight will be my last night serving as chair of the P&Z. I've been on this committee or commission for going on 6 years now. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a whole lot. It was very difficult at times going through the initial processes and learning the B3. But over the last couple of years, I can say Sylvia has been a great help in helping me understand and make sense of things that I thought I was, but wasn't sure I was making sense of. But anyway, I've spoken with Sylvia. I will be stepping down as chair. I will be resigning due to the fact that I will be running for mayor of Bastrop. So I'm turning my packet in tomorrow, and as a result of me running for that position, I can no longer serve as chair. So it has been an honor to serve as y'all's chair. Appreciate the ones who were here who voted me in. Thank you for those who committed to this. It is as you can see, it's a big deal here. So appreciate all the support, and yeah, thank you. And I'm sure I'll have to make some kind of recommendations for future chairs or people.
He
in the
will
audience.
not. He will not. His resignation becomes effective.
Soon as I.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You brought it up.
So, all right. On to agenda item 14. Yes, we do have a vice chair that can serve as
Make a motion,
chair.
we adjourn.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Good night, Bastrop. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Ish, for all your hard work.